subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Threw the umbrella to Jason, stretched out his hand to pull Meow Moo up, carried it on his back, and walked forward. Jason held an umbrella and supported the seedlings beside him. Oswald walked along the road towards the most famous doctor in the Upper East Side. Just like in the movies, reinforcements always arrive late, and the police car with a broken windshield drives over crookedly. Just like Sheriff Gordon, who came down from the battlefield, he surrounded everyone with his men. Not only the Upper East Side was difficult to defeat. In order to deal with Batman and show off in front of Falcone, Maroni frantically recruited a large number of people, including felons who escaped from Blackgate Prison. It was really an all-out war. In the Triangle Point Warehouse District, where Gordon personally led the team, the money-minded Mexican gang actually had grenade launchers in their hands. This kind of heavy weapon almost wiped out the special forces deployed by the Gotham Police Department. After mobilizing all police forces from the surrounding police stations and the Gotham Police Department's Special Operations Team, they successfully destroyed the group of Mexican gangsters in the Warehouse District and captured them all. This matter has become a big deal. Police Chief Loeb directly issued a message to investigate thoroughly. They can tolerate gangsters making money and causing trouble, but they will never allow gangsters to arm themselves and turn Gotham into a battlefield. FK, it hurts. Niji, who was awakened by the stinging pain in his back, woke up with a scream and quickly stood up and looked around. This is not a street, nor is it Bar Zero, nor is it Arkham Police Station. The surrounding furnishings are all white, and there is the smell of disinfectant in the air, and it looks so familiar. Wake up. I thought you had to wait for a while, and then more than 30 stitches would be enough. A kind voice sounded from the side. Niji propped up his body with his arms and looked to the side. He was a female doctor with gray hair, in her 50s, wearing a white coat, and there was some medical equipment in her pocket. Ms. Leslie Tompkins. Niji recognized who she was and immediately felt relieved. He lay on the bed and then realized that the clothes on his upper body had been taken off and thrown into the yellow trash can on the ground. Leslie Tompkins was a well-known good person in the Upper East Side. No matter who they were, she would treat them as long as they were sick, even homeless people with no money. Moreover, his medical skills are extremely good. He has been here for more than 20 years. He is unmarried and is an idealist. On the Upper East Side, no one even cares about murder, but anyone who dares to speak ill of Ms. Leslie Tompkins will be beaten to death the same day, even the next day. There was once a gangster from out of town who robbed Ms. Tompkins' medical clinic and injured Ms. Tompkins. As a result, the entire Upper East Side mobilized that night, including the rival gangs and police officers from the police station, who smashed the out-of-town gangster into a pulp and rushed it into the sewer. The next day, all the lost items from Ms. Tompkins' medical clinic were returned and repaired. Chapter 62-2, or 3 Things About Night Patrol. Niji was lying on the hospital bed, and Ms. Tompkins took a crochet hook and sutured the wound on Niji's back. The sharp hook tip pierces the skin, pulling on the black thread like sewing clothes, and stitches the split skin together. The stinging pain from these needles made Niji grab the sheets and grin unbearably. The wound was so big that it almost penetrated the entire back. "Ma'am, can you give me an injection for anesthesia?" Niji clutched the sheets and begged for mercy. The honorific title for Leslie Tompkins is Ms. Even the homeless people on the street know the title. But Niji also knows something. Ms. Tompkins is also a classmate of Thomas Wayne, who is also the biological father of Batman Bruce Wayne. Both of them were highly skilled doctors, but it was a pity that Thomas Wayne and his wife Martha died in Crime Alley. At that time, Bruce Wayne's psychological treatment was still done by Ms. Tompkins. She was also one of the few people who knew Batman's true identity. This is also a place where Batman often visits for treatment. After all, Alfred is helpless with some injuries. After all, his young master is really very capable. It would be too wasteful to use anesthesia for a thick-skinned little BD like you. Bear with me, there's still 30 injections left. If you feel pain, there's a magazine under the bed to distract you. Ms. Tompkins refused Niji's request picked up the hemostatic forceps, clamped the damaged skin, and pulled it to make the wound fit more perfectly before sewing it up. This sour and painful feeling made Niji's anus tighten, and her face became distorted. Damn, it's exciting. Niji reached under the bed and took out the pain relief magazine. When he saw it, he saw that it was Playboy, the largest erotic magazine in the United States. It was really a diversion. He reached out and flipped through 2 pages. He didn't even know when this book was from. The color pictures were all blurred into mosaics. Niji put the magazine back and couldn't appreciate it at all. Who sent me here? Niji distracted himself and tried to change the subject. This place couldn't be the police. Otherwise, he should be lying in Gotham Central Hospital now. It's the little guy Oswald, the one who plays well with you. By the way, there's a little guy waiting at the door. He is very worried about you. Ms. Tompkins kept sewing in her hands and said with a slight smile. At her age, there was really no problem in calling Niji and the others little ones. As soon as he heard that it was Oswald the Penguin, Niji understood. Indeed, that guy also lived in the Upper East Side, and he was a rather prestigious little boss. Hiss, Niji thought about it for a moment. It seemed that he still owed him 20,000 yuan, and he just had more money, so he could pay it back to him. After confiscating 2 sites in Moroni, they made at least over 200,000 yuan. It really felt like taking advantage of the situation, and it was very exciting. In other words, seedlings have their own bottom line. If they put it with others, they will not only get the money, but also eat the goods together. As for the goods delivered to the evidence office, they may also be stolen and sold. This kind of operation is already common in Gotham. The stinging pain on the back made Niji's expression wrinkle together, and the thoughts he gathered were unstable. But he did not dare to shout out. Jason was outside, and his majestic aura could not be lowered. That little guy, who are you? He seemed to be very close to you. He is still waiting outside. Why don't you see him? Ms. Tompkins said distractedly while adjusting the crochet hook, touching the skin with her fingertips and calculating the angle of the suture. The godson I adopted looks a lot like me. Niji smiled in amusement, and Ms. Tompkins directly injected the needle. Niji gritted his teeth and inhaled with a hiss. It hurt. Indeed, it's quite similar. Ms. Tompkins smiled, remembering what Niji and the others looked like when they were children. Jerry and Niji were fighting outside and ran here when they were injured. The gangsters who caused trouble everywhere at that time have now become policemen. Well, that's pretty good. Are you going to be his godfather? Ms. Tompkins asked. It's better than living on the streets. Although I can't teach him anything, at least I'm responsible. Niji frowned and said with a smile, he is not Batman. The bottom line is so high. If Jason wants him to choose between him and Joker, then Joker's head could be crushed by Niji. Okay, ma'am. Let him go out to eat some food first. It's evening. The child is hungry. He can stop for a while. I'm not in a hurry. Niji couldn't bear it any longer, so he found a topic and asked Tompkins to find Jason so that he could relax a bit. The pain was unbearable. Really? Miss Tompkins paused and asked. Niji nodded quickly. Miss Tompkins put down her crochet hook, turned around, and walked out. Niji also breathed a sigh of relief and raised her hand to wipe the sweat from her forehead. The frosted glass door of the operating room was pushed open, and Jason stood at the door with some restraint. How should I put it? The sound insulation of this place was very poor. Okay, let's go eat first. This is what he gave us. Ms. Tompkins took out 2 bills from her white coat and handed them to Jason, asking him to go out for dinner. As for the rest, it's medical expenses. Jason took the banknote and walked out in a daze, not knowing what he was thinking. When he reacted, he was already lost. It was pitch dark all around, and they were all old houses of the same style, and not even a light could be seen. Where am I? Jason was a little panicked. He was thinking about other things just now and didn't pay attention to the surrounding situation, but he reacted quickly. Return the way you came. When he walked near a house, Jason heard crying. In this dark place, surrounded by dilapidated old houses, it was still eerie, and now suddenly there was crying. Even though Jason was brave, he was startled. He leaned against the wooden wall on one side and looked towards the place where the crying was coming. Is it inside the house? Jason tilted his head and looked over there, then looked left and right. His curiosity overcame his fear of the unknown, and he walked over lightly. Lying on the window and looking inside, Jason grabbed a stone in disgust and pushed away the cat poop on the windowsill. Jack, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Someone is talking in the room. Is it a woman? Who is Jack? Jason looked inside with questions in his head. A small candle was lit on the table inside. A pregnant woman is sitting on a chair. She has a big belly, blonde hair, but a tired face. On her lap, there was a man holding her head and crying. The cry was very sad and unpleasant, like a duck being strangled by the neck. No wonder Jason thought of ghosts when he heard crying. Maybe there was a quarrel at home? Jason thought to himself. But I still looked at the woman, or to be precise, the belly carrying the baby. They were a family. Jason was a little envious, and then remembered what Niji said, and scratched his head awkwardly. Jenny, I failed. I messed everything up. My jokes didn't make those people laugh. I was fired from the theater. No theater wants me. The man named Jack raised his head sadly, with tears falling from his face and an ugly smile on his face. This is a man who has just experienced failure. It's okay, baby, you'll be fine. A woman named Jenny stroked his back and comforted him. No, Jenny, you married a loser. Honey, that's not. It's a fact. I can't support you, Jenny. What should we do? What should we do with our children? It's okay. The baby won't be born within 3 months. Mrs. Burgess will extend our lease. She sympathizes with me and will definitely get over it. No, she hates me. Every time I come back, she will come out and stare at me. This house and the surrounding area are polluted by those cat feces and the stench of those old people. Before the child is born, I want to take you away. Jack sat on the ground, as if to confirm his thoughts. I just want enough money so we can move to a nicer neighborhood. Those women on the street can make that much in a weekend, and they don't even have to tell a joke. Honey, don't worry. Don't worry about anything. I still love you, you know? It doesn't matter if you have a job or not. Even if you are fired, it's still great. Jenny smiled and said, Look, you at least know how to make me laugh. Don't be so serious. My dear, just smile. Jack tried his best to smile, but the bitterness of life prevented him from smiling. He held his mouth with his fingers, pulled the corners of his mouth apart, and revealed a smile. Looking at the scene in the room, Jason left here quietly, but he still didn't know how to get out. Maybe I should ask someone, but it's just like what the man said around here. Apart from wild cats and old people snoring, you can't see them. Meow, a cat quickly ran past the wall. After a while, another cat ran past. They both went in the same direction, and another cat ran in that direction. Jason thought for a moment and followed. The surrounding houses had changed, and there was no longer that eerie feeling. There are more and more houses with lights on around, and there are also more cats. There must be hundreds of them, right? To be honest, this was the first time Jason had seen so many cats. They were all lying on both sides of the road, as if they were waiting for something. The door next to the room was pushed open, and a girl carrying a big basin came out, chewing gum in her mouth, placed the big basin on the ground casually, and blew a big bubble. Poof! The bubble was blown. The girl chewed the gum back, looked at Jason surrounded by cats, and asked curiously, Who are you? Why are you here? I want to know, where's the hospital? It's the hospital of a very kind old lady. Jason said a little awkwardly. He couldn't figure it out. As for where it was over there, he didn't pay attention. Oh, you're talking about Miss Tompkins, over there. Just keep walking and you'll be there. The girl carelessly stretched out her hand and pointed to the east. Thanks. Jason looked at the direction she pointed and hurriedly ran over. The cats around him, as well as the girl holding the cat in her arms, all watched him leave. Holly, who are you talking to? A gorgeous-looking woman wearing a tight-fitting black leather jacket walked out of the house, carrying 2 bags of cat food. A stupid boy who went the wrong way and got lost here. Chapter 63, The Birth of Joker. 1. After Niji returned to Arkham Police Station, he simply divided the money and began to take medical leave. Just kidding, he is not an old tough guy like Gordon who can be on the police 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day. If Gordon's position hadn't been rising and falling, he would have remained at the first position on the front line. Maybe he won't live to retire at 71. In the past few days, the biggest news in Gotham is that the Gotham police who have always been corrupt and ridiculed by talk show hosts, have had fierce conflicts with street gangs. Just when the people of Gotham were full of expectations, this outbreak of justice defeating evil stopped. Chief Gordon, the nemesis of crime, who worked overtime for 5 consecutive days, was reprimanded by Police Chief Loeb because he was not only in the Shamaroni family, but also in Falcone and personally closed a bar in Falcone. "Where's Batman?" Loeb sat behind his desk, clasped his hands in front of his eyes, and looked coldly at Gordon in front of him. "Checking," Gordon said dryly. "Who sent Maroni here last night?" Loeb suppressed his anger and asked coldly. Last night, Maroni, who had left Gotham by boat to avoid the limelight, was hung upside down in his pajamas at the door of the Gotham police station, looking like a fat goose hanging on a shelf in a butcher shop. "Batman." Gordon lowered his head. "Then what are you still doing here?" "Catch him. Gotham doesn't need such a random guy." Loeb shouted angrily. He was in the city hall, in front of the upper-class people who had been intimidated by Batman, and he was sure to throw Batman into prison. So, what is Gordon doing here? He mobilized manpower to raid the Maroni family's properties and even crack down on street gangs. However, these were minor matters. However, he actually dared to challenge Falcone. He had no idea what Falcone represented, nor how much interest was involved. So how could he dare? Gordon, who was scolded by Loeb, walked out of the police chief's office with a dark face. Block, who was standing in the corridor holding a coffee cup and eating donuts, laughed happily and said, "How about that? I was right." Gordon walked to the side, pushed open the window, took off his glasses, and rubbed his face tiredly. "Let's take down Maroni first. Did he explain anything?" "Oh my God, you actually want him to confess?" Bullock took a bite of the donut, as if he had heard a fantasy. "3 of that guy's lawyers have already come. We can't hold him for long. If you want to send him to jail, you must at least find a prosecutor who dares to prosecute him. Judge, and there must be someone who dares to testify." Bullock took a sip of coffee and shook his head helplessly. These mafia families with deep roots were no longer something they could shake. The last district attorney who prosecuted Maroni was the one who took people to fish him out of the Gotham Canal. What could they do if the witnesses who originally promised to testify recanted their confessions in court? To put it bluntly, they still have the police uniforms on them. Without these police uniforms, those bastards might not know how they would deal with them. "Gordon, you were right to divorce. Let them leave here." "That's right." Bullock threw the last piece of donut into his mouth. "Alas." Gordon sighed and put on his glasses. "Let's go see Mr. Maroni and see if he needs anything." He needs freedom." Bullock grinned and said with a sinister smile, "You see, I have to prove myself as a qualified husband and father. You know, if it weren't for these important things, I wouldn't do such a thing." The man who had been crying on his wife's lap in the house that day, Jack, was now sitting at a small table in a bar. He was explaining something to the 2 men in front of him, but the 2 men didn't care at all about why he wanted to do this. Okay, we get it. How much do you know about ACE Chemical Plant?" A man interrupted him and asked directly. ACE Chemical Factory is an industry owned by the Kane family, but due to industrial adjustment, this chemical factory has temporarily ceased operations. I started out as a lab assistant there. It was a really good job, but what did I do? I actually quit my job to become a comedian. Jack recalled the stupid things he had done and scratched his hair in frustration. After resigning from ACE Chemical Plant, when he looked for a job again, only the old chemical plants in Arkham District were willing to hire him. And what did he do? Jack frowned in pain. The 2 men looked at each other, pushed a wine glass in front of Jack, and one man said, "Okay, we need your help to get through that chemical plant, and you can make a lot of money, right?" The man said seductively, "Think about it. You can also have a lot of money, fine wine, luxury cars, and beautiful women." No. I just want to take Jenny away from that old house." Jack waved his hands quickly. He didn't want those things. He just wanted to... "Okay, in order to prevent others from associating robbery with you, we have prepared a good thing for you." Another man took out a suitcase from under the table. After opening it, there was a red hood, like a bucket, and a little reflective. This was last month. Those Red Hood guys wore it. Jack asked in surprise. He still reads the news, so he knows the origin of this special style of headgear. "Come on, there is no such thing as the Red Hood gang." They're just masked robbers, just like us. Think about it, brother. You just need to take us through the chemical plant tonight. You don't have to do anything else. Tomorrow, you can get us some money and go to that damn place wherever you want. Can. At this time, the door of the bar was pushed open and 2 policemen walked in. The 2 people who were still singing along quickly lowered their heads, not wanting to attract attention. Jack lowered his head nervously and drank the wine in the glass. The 2 policemen walked to the bar, took a photo, and said something to the shop owner, then turned around and looked over. There's still very few customers in the bar during the day. The police came over and stood next to Jack. Cold sweat broke out on Jack's head. This was because he had just decided to become a bank robber. "Excuse me, are you Mr. Jack?" "Mr. Jack who lives at Mrs. Burgess's house," the policeman asked. I am." Jack nodded nervously. The 2 policemen looked at each other. The policeman who had just asked took off his hat and said in a pitiful tone, "Listen, I hate telling you this kind of bad news. The probability of such an accident is only 1 in 1,000. The hospital will tell you what happened. Your wife passed away." Another policeman raised his hand and patted Jack's shoulder. "Listen, if I were you, I would choose to drink a few more drinks." The 2 policemen left the bar after delivering the message. Only the dumbfounded Jack sat on the chair like a wooden man, unable to believe the bad news for a long time. The 2 associates heard what happened to Jack, but they were more concerned about the plan they made than this. The employees on duty at that bank tonight are one of their own. They have a golden opportunity. As long as they walk through the chemical plant, they can take away all the banknotes in the bank without anyone noticing. "Jenny, this is impossible, impossible. Brother, your wife passed away. I am very heartbroken, but you must come tonight so that you can give her a good burial tomorrow. Those who escape in the middle of the battle will not end well, without exception." But she... "No big deal. You're going tonight, right?" "Yes, I'll go." The 2 men looked at each other and smiled, turned around, and walked out of the bar. Only Jack sat on the chair with blank eyes, looking at the wine in the glass. Chapter 64: The Birth of Joker. Jenny died. She was electrocuted when a short-circuited wire in disrepair caused her to experiment with a bottle warmer. The caller was the landlady, Mrs. Burgess, who was holding a white, long-haired cat as old as herself in her arms. The lonely Jack stood at the door of that home, looking inside for a long time, and did not leave until dark. "Jesus, I thought you weren't coming. Put it on." Beside the sewer at night, the 2 robbers saw Jack coming and quickly put a red hood on his head. "Wait a minute. What should I do if I can't see? Why don't you open a crack? It smells so pungent," Jack said angrily while wearing a hood. "Just turn it around and it'll be fine. There's a double-sided lens inside, so you can see it. As for the smell, just bear with it." One of the robbers said with a smile that they bought the hood from the homeless man in Arkham, and it was a real red hood. "Stop talking nonsense and move forward quickly. Are you sure you still remember the way?" Another robber pushed Jack unceremoniously. "The sewer here emits an unpleasant smell due to the discharge of chemical wastewater, and money is waving at them. So how can they waste time? Go this way." Jack walked in front and acted as guide. Everything is going according to plan. But they are not the only ones at the ACE chemical factory today. There are also police who came to destroy the drug manufacturing factory. This kind of chemical factory that has stopped production and closed down is the best cover for some gang members. They produce some drugs and even liquid bombs here. Ooh, a policeman saw Jack and the others walking quietly past here. The red hood was too conspicuous. Why are there police here? When the 2 robbers saw the policeman holding a flashlight, they took out the revolver they bought from the black market and started shooting. Bang, 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 gunshots shattered the silence of the chemical plant. Woof, woof, woof. The police dogs also barked. Sergeant Gordon, who was in command at the scene, knew something was wrong when he heard the gunshots. Inside the factory, the drug-producing gang members also reacted. "Action! Action!" the command sounded from the pager. The police suddenly appeared around them. Although the target was not Jack and the others had a guilty conscience. The 2 robbers shot all the bullets in their guns, turned around, and ran away, leaving Jack here. According to their original plan, Jack was left as a scapegoat. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put the red hood on him. "This is N6. I found a red hood here. Repeat, I found a red hood." The police channel rang with police shouts. The siege of the chemical plant has been completed, and the police are attacking inside, and the police dogs are biting and rushing in. Gunshots, shouts, chaos. Outside, Gordon heard the information about the Red Hood, and a layer of cold sweat broke out on his forehead. In this case, there is no way he can draw anyone's hand anymore. The policeman who was holding a pistol and shooting at the Red Hood suddenly felt a whirring sound on his head and looked up. A huge amount of black bat flew over his head and landed on the iron shelf on the side. It was Batman. The desperate Red Hood climbed onto the iron frame and hurriedly ran towards the place where he could escape according to the memory in his mind. There was a clang, and Batman grabbed the rope and jumped up directly, landing on the Red Hood's only way to escape. "Oh God, God, are you punishing me?" "No, no." The Red Hood screamed, turned around, and ran away. Batman was about to launch his hook and catch him when an explosion suddenly occurred in a factory in the distance. A guy who had taken too many drugs accidentally shot the liquid bomb. This delay allowed the Red Hood to run away. Batman looked up at the barrels filled with chemical materials and flew up with his grapple gun. He had already seen the floor plan of the chemical plant when he came. Red Hood can't run away. Batman flew to a high place and landed on the top of a water tank, looking down at the iron corridor below. There's no one, not on the left, not on the right, not on either side. Batman frowned and jumped onto the jug next door, but still didn't see the Red Hood. But I saw a leather shoe that had fallen off the bottom, and the shoelaces were hanging on an iron shelf next to a huge amount of sewage pool, as if it had fallen. Batman looked down at the cesspool. This cesspool was very large, as high as 2 stories. It was round and looked like a bucket when standing high. Foam is rolling inside, and the green chemical liquid is constantly twisting like a grimace. This is a sewage pool specially designed to handle some dangerous chemicals. As Jack sank to the bottom of the sewage pool, his mask was filled with corrosive chemicals. His skin was corroded and painful, as if there were millions of ants biting his body and soul. He struggled to swing his hands in the water. While waving his hands, he touched the drain valve that workers needed to activate when cleaning the sewage pool. The circular valve opened, sucking him in like a whirlpool, and the amount of water in the sewage pool decreased rapidly. 3 minutes later, in the sewer outside, Jack vomited and crawled out of it. His skin was corroded by the chemical and turned pale. If the factory hadn't been closed for a long time, the chemicals inside would have evaporated. Now all that's left of him is his bones sunk at the bottom of the water. "No. Jack knelt on the ground, holding his hair tightly with both hands, crying and laughing while his voice, which had been damaged by chemicals, became extremely sharp. "Hee-ah-ha-ha. Jenny, why are you so serious? Smile, smile, hee-ah." The next day, Arkham PD. "Red Hood?" No. Chief Gordon, I already told you on the phone that Niji is on vacation." Jerry, who came back from vacation, was wearing a police detective jacket and uniform, sitting on a chair, and said helplessly, "You also know that Niji was injured, and he also took a period of healing leave to travel and relax." "Where did he go?" Gordon sat on the chair next to him and looked at the photos from last night. After arresting the gang members, the police dog found a Red Hood next to the sewer, and after identification, it's confirmed that this is the Red Hood gang that caused havoc in the Coventry area before and also robbed a huge amount of property. The gang boss has not been caught yet. After seeing the Hood last night, Gordon reopened the case. "I originally wanted to come over to see if Niji had any ideas or if he could give me some advice or help, but no one was there. Star City. We have 2 friends over there. He went over to bring them back. Moreover, Star City is also a good place for recuperation." Jerry nodded. Gordon also nodded. The environment there is indeed more suitable for recuperation than Gotham, but this case has to be investigated by oneself. Thinking of this, Gordon turned to look at the tall and burly Jerry. His glance made Jerry suddenly feel that something was wrong. "You have been temporarily transferred to the crime squad to help investigate the Red Hood case. We are short of manpower there," Gordon said helplessly. The serious crime team he was responsible for was now so busy that he was out of breath. You could get an extra salary in the major crimes unit. Gordon stated the conditions before Jerry refused, but he didn't say that the crime team's work was 3 times that of ordinary police. Chapter 65, leaving Gotham high in the mountains, far away from Gotham City. Neji was wearing a white casual sportswear and Tyrannosaurus sunglasses on his face. He was holding a cigarette at an angle and hissing condescendingly. Viewed from this side, the sky over Gotham City seems to be covered with an ominous cloud. They say that working overtime makes people happy, but holidays are rare, and you can't have your cake and eat it too. So Neji chose the latter and went to Star City to pick up his right-hand man and take a stroll to see if he could gain anything. On the way to Star City, he happened to pass by Metropolis. After reading newspapers for so long, I am afraid he is the only one in Gotham who has a Sunday newspaper every day. I also collected a large number of newspaper clippings. Well, they were all written by Clark. Superfans can do the math. This time I stopped by to join in the fun, get an autograph, and get familiar with them. If something happens one day, I will be so angry that I will raise my head and shout, "Superman! Dang, 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 dang." The superhero appears. Of course, if Superman encounters something, forget it. He can't solve it, and Neji doesn't want to get involved. Superman is infinitely stronger and takes up 90% of the Justice League's combat power. However, when it's Superman's turn to fight against the odds, it will definitely be a devastating world collapse disaster. Hey, The sound of Jason pumping his fist came from behind. Neji shivered, pulled up his pants, blew out a smoke ring with a cigarette in his hand, and turned to look behind him. Jason was shirtless and was punching the Iron Monkey fist one after another. Although his movements were a bit immature, he was really good at it. This was the first time that Neji understood the concept of what people often call a martial arts sapling, a genius. Just by watching it once, you can tell the resemblance, not the physical resemblance, but the fierce resemblance of the Iron Monkey fist, the feeling of hitting dead man with one punch. On the picnic table next to it, there was also a statue of the Iron Fist Stone Monkey. In order to ensure seriousness, Miamu also bought an incense burner and incense sticks from an incense and candle shop in Chinatown. However, Jason does not have the mysterious sense of space that can be entered by using the Iron Monkey fist style. It will probably take a lot of practice to achieve that kind of key sense. As for Neji, he entered it all at once after a sudden enlightenment, and he almost skipped a grade. But if he wants to teach others, Neji can be called a great master if he is not humble. If his fists are not enough, Neji can show off his new revolver on his belt. In addition to his fist and kick skills, he also has considerable research on the American II/. Before electrocuting people, Neji concluded over and over again that the equipment he brought with him was just a little less lethal. I directly replaced the portable revolver with a modified version of the Smith & Wesson M500, which has an ammunition capacity of 5 rounds and uses .500 Magnum bullets, which is 12.7 millimeters. A complete hand cannon. In the entire Gotham police force, Neji is probably the only one equipped with a gun. It can blast through a 10mm steel plate with one shot. If it hits a person's head, it will explode on the spot. Neji's main gun, the Glock 17, also had someone change the barrel from a 9mm bullet to a .40 Smith & Wesson bullet, and the shooting damage was also more sufficient. After finishing a set of punches, Jason punched a wooden board on the table with a thud. Miamu felt his hands hurt just looking at it, but the wooden board didn't move at all. Jason grinned in pain, turned around and clasped his fists in salute, lowered his head and said, "Master, pack up your things and leave. It's rare to have such good weather." Miamu waved his hand and asked Jason to pack up all the things and stuff them into the car next to him that Miamu bought for 50 yuan. It was the classic car that was distributed to the Arkham police station. Because Arkham added 2 new police cars, this car was eliminated. It was bought by Neji, modified, and changed its color. The Rose Red Beetle classic car is a very cool color. But the weather today is really good with blue sky and white clouds. To be precise, after leaving Gotham, there are green mountains and green waters. As a city with an industrial foundation of hundreds of years, Gotham's clouds in the sky are all sparks ejected from a steel furnace. Jason has also packed it up here folded the picnic table, threw it on the roof of the car, and tied it with a rope. Niji put the Iron Fist stone monkey into his backpack and carried it with him. He claimed to be the successor of the Iron Monkey Fist and currently had only one apprentice. Throwing the cigarette butt on the ground and stamping it out, Niji picked up his backpack and put it into the car. He sat in the driver's seat and started the engine. The engine roared with a pop. Jason opened the car door and sat in the passenger seat. He was wearing a training suit made by Niji himself. It was two pieces of clothing in one, with a dark blue long-sleeved shirt underneath and an orange short-sleeved shirt outside. There's also a circle on the back, and the Chinese character, monkey, and it is a copy of the suit of the Kame Sennin sect. It is not in the same universe, so there's no need to worry about the Kame sect Qigong flying over. Put on your glasses and let's go. Niji threw a pair of sunglasses to Jason, and both of them put on their sunglasses and sat in the car with a dragging look. Niji stepped on the accelerator, and the Beetle jumped on the spot, swaying down the mountain, getting further and further away from Gotham City, going in the opposite direction. There's also a camping tent or something tied to the roof of the car. Meanwhile, in Gotham, Maroni came out of the Gotham Police Department and was sent in again. This time, Gordon was in a very calm mood, so calm that the other party's lawyer drooled and was still wiping his glasses slowly. In short, my client, Mr. Maroni, is innocent. He is a member of Gotham Citizens and should not be treated so roughly, the lawyer shouted righteously. Sal Maroni, who was sitting next to him, smiled and was obviously very satisfied with the lawyer he paid for. However, Maroni was already in a wheelchair. He walked out of the police station with his front foot and was attacked by Batman on his back foot. His right leg was broken. It is now in a plaster cast and tied with thick gauze. Okay, since you are innocent, please come back. Regarding Batman's accusation, we will work as soon as possible. Gordon never thought that one day he would use this perfunctory way of dealing with others. But looking at Maroni's appearance, Gordon was still very happy. After all, someone could cure them, and they didn't have nothing to fear. The lawyer hesitated for a moment. This was different from what he had thought in advance. Maroni glared at him. The lawyer lowered his attitude. My client needs protection. The Bat Thug will use violence against him after he leaves the police station. This is absolutely not allowed. Gordon looked up at Maroni and snorted. I've never heard of the boss needing police protection. Just like Falcone's nickname is Roman, Maroni's nickname is the boss. Gordon's ridicule made Maroni's expression change, but he had to admit that he really needed police protection now. The men and territory he gathered were all destroyed by Gordon and Batman. Even the electrocutioners recruited at a high price were reduced to ashes. The power under his command was greatly damaged. If the goods were lost and the store was sealed, at most it would be a loss of money, but if the people were gone, it would be equivalent to chopping off his hands and feet, especially for those middle-level cadres. Gordon couldn't find a prosecutor who dared to prosecute Maroni, but that didn't mean he couldn't handle others. Chapter 66 Metropolis is located on the East Coast and is also a bustling city. It's not that far from Gotham City. When the weather is good, you can see the bat signal shining on the clouds above Gotham on the beach of Metropolis. However, there is no bat light yet. No matter how courageous Gordon is, he would not dare to install a searchlight to summon Batman on the rooftop of the Gotham police station at this time. Metropolis is famous for Superman. Many companies choose to invest and move here because of Superman as their patron saint. The business environment is much better than that of Gotham. In the urban skyline composed of skyscrapers, the tallest skyscraper is the headquarters of the famous Lex Group, which is Bald Luther's company. Just comparing it to Gotham's landmark building, Wayne Group's headquarters combines multiple functions into one. Wayne Tower. The Lex Group seems a bit vulgar to the nouveau riche. Therefore, Lex Luthor launched the Lex Tower project, which sounds like plagiarism. But when it comes to businessmen, can that be called plagiarism? It's called a tribute to a classic, but the project has been halted because Lex Luthor was sent to prison by Superman. The entire Lex Group was under investigation, and the stock price plummeted. It was green, and Green Lantern had never been so green. During this time, Superman was flying around in the sky a lot, bringing those who jumped off the building safely downstairs. What a kind person. If this were in Gotham, Well, die. Get the next batch. This time, Miyamu also planned to make a lot of money. The money he collected was not a lot, but with his stock alone, he could be said to have enough food and clothing for the rest of his life, because Bald Luther's life was very tough. Superman died, and Luther carried the coffin. So Niji is not worried at all about whether there are any risks in this matter. Others are afraid, and he is excited. Others are excited, and he is doubly excited. Only, looking at Bald Luther's criminal record, Niji's face was indescribably wonderful. The super-rich man worth billions personally led a team to rob a bank, just to challenge Superman for a few $1,000,000. It can only be said that it is not unreasonable for those who jumped off the building to accuse Luther of having his brain stepped on by a pig. Holding the stock receipt in his hand, Miyamu rolled up the sack containing the money and threw it into the trash can. The simple Gotham people did not believe in checks, only banknotes. Niji looked up at a building to the west, which was his next target, Daily Planet. It was already getting late, and he might still be able to have dinner with Da Chow. Master, am I going? Go ahead and get me an autograph. Clark Kent's. Jason took Niji's newspaper clipping diary, shook it, turned around, and ran towards the Daily Planet building. It's easier to let children do this kind of thing, and a good old guy like Chow won't have any evil intentions. Unlike Batman, who is a specialty of Gotham, if I meet you, I will almost have to investigate all 18 generations of your ancestors. Absolute persecution paranoia. Wait, it seems that there is no problem if you put it this way. After all, in the Justice League, who would secretly prepare a set of countermeasures for each hero? Even the villain's old enemies were not as prepared as Batman. After telling the truth to his family, Batman surpassed the villains. They say that when you stare into the abyss is also staring into you. Batman is like this. After fighting with psychopaths, lunatics, and perverts for a long time, the Batman behind him is no different from a psychopath. Don't kill is his final bottom line. Well, but thinking about it on the other hand, this guy has done everything except not killing, and later he even chose to spy on the entire Gotham. He is wary of everyone, even the Robins who were raised as sons and have certain countermeasures. There's no one left. Just when Niji was crossing his arms and thinking wildly, Jason ran into the Daily Planet building and ran out again with a young man with dark blonde hair. The young man had good physical strength. He was dragged by Jason and ran over without even taking a breath. He was wearing a photographer's vest with the pocket stuffed with all kinds of small things. What caught Niji's attention was a silver mechanical watch on his wrist. Based on intuition, Niji was sure that this was a good thing. If he guessed correctly, this should be a signal watch made by Superman. It would emit a special signal sound wave to summon Superman. Hello, I am. Hello, Mr. Olsen. The photo you took of Superman bravely rescuing the cat from the water on the front page of the Daily Planet is really great. I heard that you even received an invitation to participate. Congratulations, congratulations. Niji grabbed Jimmy Olsen's hand and shook it, just like a fan who had admired him for a long time and met the star he had longed for. Jimmy was a little surprised, but the front page photo was indeed taken by him, and he also received an invitation from the Animal Protection Organization for the most beautiful animal photography contest. By the way, Mr. Olsen, please sign your name for me. Niji took out Superman peripherals bought from a roadside stall from his pocket, a signed book with the Superman logo. It has to be said that Superman is really popular in the metropolis, and these peripherals can be regarded as local specialties. Okay. Gigan Olsen was somewhat flattered and took the autograph book, took out a ballpoint pen from the pocket of his photography vest, and signed his name on it. Jason, who was watching this scene from the side, blinked. He was a little confused. How could Miyamu, who kept saying that he had never been out of Gotham on the road, know the person he casually called out in the Daily Planet? Moreover, it looks very familiar. If Niji knew Jason's doubts, he would definitely smile mysteriously, although the guy in front of him looked like an ordinary person. But he is a close friend of the country boy Clark, and he is also a roommate who lives in the same rental house, a colleague in the company, and one of the luckiest people in the metropolis. The reason why I say this is because he has obtained many one-time super abilities through various reasons. A mutation that would be lifeless when placed on an ordinary person would give him a perfect super ability. Unfortunately, it is an experience card. Within 24 hours, the ability will disappear again due to various reasons. Okay, well, Clark is not here. He and Lois went out to investigate. If you don't mind, can I keep the clipping? I think he will be happy to sign it for you. Jimmy smiled happily. When he saw the newspaper clipping in the diary, he couldn't believe it. Clark, who only writes small sections after Louise, actually is fans. Oh my God, if Clark hadn't been there, he would have really wanted to hug Clark and give her a kiss. For these little reporters, having fans asking for autographs is more gratifying than the company handing out bonuses. After all, not everyone can put the microphone in Superman's face for an interview. Can I ask where they went? I can also be of some help. Niji took out the metal police badge from his arms, and the abbreviation of Gotham Police Department GCPD was shining brightly. Hey, are you a policeman? Jimmy looked at the police badge curiously. If this were in Gotham, after Niji showed his police badge, the locals' expressions instantly became as ugly as if they had stepped on a piece of smelly dog shit. But in big cities, the police still have a positive image, but they are relatively incompetent, and their reputation are still very good. They went to investigate missing cases. Recently, many children have disappeared in the metropolis, causing a lot of panic. Jimmy frowned and said, Miss Louise, you should know that she is very strong. And our friend Miss Kate also encountered something. What are those things? Can you tell me? I am still very confident in solving crimes. Niji asked, taking back his police badge. Lois is Clark's wild girlfriend, Clark's boss and partner, and the first person to interview Superman at close range. And it's also Superman's #1 protection target. With his glasses on, he is Clark, a big, weak, affable country boy. He takes off his glasses, walks into the phone booth, and when he comes out, he is Superman with a body of steel and omnipotence. Chapter 67 Toy Factory. The Red Beetle was driving on the road in the metropolis. Niji held the steering wheel and accelerated again. Jimmy, who was sitting in the back seat, was holding a phone to contact Louise and the others, who had lost contact. Still not answering the phone? Niji looked at the rearview mirror and asked, then stepped on the accelerator again, and the Beetle's exhaust pipe accelerated like a fart. No, that's not right. Clark didn't answer the phone either. Just wait. I'll make another call. Jimmy said nervously. The missing child case that Louise and the others went to investigate was related to their colleague from Daily Planet, Kate Grant. She is a 26-year-old young woman, unmarried, a very funny and compassionate woman. The case of missing children has appeared on the front page of the Daily Planet for 3 consecutive days. The number of missing children is increasing, but the incompetent police have not found any clues. Louise, the chief investigative reporter of the Daily Planet, decided to take her loyal little brother Clark to investigate this matter. As a result, the missing child was found in Miss Kate's home, dressed in doll clothes and tied with ribbons, and was delivered to her door as a gift with a note attached. Kate, be my mother, adopt me, and love your sweet baby. Moreover, they were sent for 2 consecutive days. After a doctor's examination, these children were found to be mentally manipulated. When hearing the content of the note, Niji wondered if it was someone from Gotham who had fled here. After all, the smell was so strong that it could even be reserved for a single room in Arkham Asylum. Afterwards, it was Louise who took the lead in pursuing the investigation, because Clark unexpectedly found some clues. There is an abandoned toy factory in the western suburbs of the metropolis. Among the toys they once produced, there were doll sets of this style. The fabrics were very old-fashioned, and there is no such production line anymore. As for Niji and the others, they were also rushing there. And by the way, they made a call to the incompetent Metropolitan Police. Although Clark is here, the final result is Superman saving the beauty, but Niji is still happy to get involved. The abandoned toy factory in the western suburbs of the metropolis can be seen in a dilapidated state from a distance, but it has been bought by a company from a seaside city and will soon enter the development stage. Well, I hope they won't cry when General Krypton and Steppenwolf come. The Beetle parked on the side of the road, and Meowmoo opened the door and got out. just looking at the abandoned factory. Niji raised his hand to stop Jimmy, who was about to open the door and come out. "Don't get out of the car. The owner has already seen us." "What?" Jimmy didn't understand. Jason, who had been sitting silently in the passenger seat and was a little bored to the point of dozing off, turned to look at the toy factory and asked in surprise, "What is that?" From the broken window of the player's factory, a series of toy cars scurried over like wasps. "Jimmy, can you drive?" Niji asked as he opened the trunk and looked into the car. With quick movements, he opened the mat of the trunk. It was like an arsenal underneath with firearms, bullets, and grenades. I can do it too." As soon as Jimmy finished speaking, Jason, who was sitting in the passenger seat, raised his hand happily, and Niji raised his head and glared at him. Jason twitched his lips, retracted into the passenger seat, crossed his arms, and looked at the toy car over there. The savagery and rebelliousness that all waifs have, Jason also has. Without a bit of ruthlessness, he wouldn't be able to survive on the streets of Gotham. But what he met was Niji and Jerry. They all came from the streets of Gotham. They couldn't be described as barbaric and violent, but there was no sense of distance at all. "Drive, get out of here." Niji loaded the M4 assault rifle in his hand and fired a burst of fire at the toy car that rushed over. Thug, tug, tug. The rifle bullets fired a series of bullet lines on the ground, and the toy car that rushed over was smashed to pieces. Jimmy, who was in the car, heard gunshots outside that sounded like a war. He quickly climbed into the driver's seat in front, started the car, kicked the accelerator, and the Beetle rolled backwards. "Toy, is it toy, man?" Niji changed the magazine, then pulled the ring of the high-explosive grenade hanging from his waist and threw it on the plastic lawn in front of the toy factory. There was a loud explosion, and the ground under your feet could feel the vibration, and the plastic lawns were blown up all over the sky. The nails hidden under the lawn were also blown up everywhere. A black pit was blown up on the ground, and the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder, smoke from the explosion. Weapons can solve most problems. If they cannot be solved, the method must be wrong. It is recommended to increase the caliber and power. This is how the history of human wars came about. Miamu was also a loyal firepower lover, so he naturally prepared a set of good guys with sufficient firepower for himself when he had the opportunity. In the toy factory, the great investigative reporter Louise and her partner Clark had their hands and feet stuck to the dough-like adhesive and were trapped on the ground. "Clark, don't be afraid. Superman will come to save us." Louise struggled with her hands and feet and encouraged Clark behind her. "Well, I believe Superman will definitely come." The big man Clark, who was back to back with Louise, nodded without blushing or heartbeat. Although this ball of glue is basically ineffective against him, his figure is very strong, as perfect as a diamond. If he takes off his clothes, the muscles on his body are enough to make those bodybuilders cover their faces and cry. Wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses on his face, they can be called the most powerful artifact in the DC universe. As long as he wears them, no one will doubt his true identity. The lines on his face are very strong. In human terms, he has thick eyebrows and big eyes. He has a dignified appearance. He is a simple and handsome young man. There are gunshots outside and explosions. Are the SEALs coming? The gunfire of M4 assault rifles, the explosion of SOHG grenades. Is it the military? Although she was stuck to the ground, Louise could still hear everything. This was due to her general father. She had spent summer vacations in the army since she was a child, so she was very familiar with firearms. Similarly, the army also cultivated her proud temperament and indomitable confidence. Of course, it would have been better if her general father hadn't been extremely disgusted with Superman. "Only one person," Clark said. His super hearing is 10,000 times stronger than Louise. Not to mention the sound of gunshots, he can also hear clearly how many people are outside, whether they are moving one leg first or what they are mumbling. He could even hear the heartbeat frequency clearly, although he couldn't see who was outside. However, Clark had already pictured it in his mind. There was a man outside, very strong, and the recoil from consecutive shots did not make any change in his breathing. And he is very careful, like a wily hunter who predicts any trap and is about to walk into it. Just at the door, he stopped, raised his hand and touched his neck, then took out a grenade, tried it, put it back and kicked the door open. With a bang, the iron door of the toy factory was kicked open. Louise raised her head and looked over there. A young man with a serious face pointed over here with an assault rifle raised. "Be careful, don't hurt the child," Louise reminded quickly. Chapter 68. That Superman Neji kicked open the iron door, opened his true eyesight, and knew what Louise was talking about in an instant. Ceiling. There were several children wearing doll clothes tied with ropes to the ceiling, holding a ball of glue in their hands. Neji's instinct was to raise his gun and shoot, but he turned around and got out of the way and hid behind another door. There were two bangs, snaps, and two balls of sticky glue were thrown over where Neji was standing just now like melted plastic dough. Miyamo is a bit of a trap. He can't hurt those children, and he still has to solve the current situation. It's a bit difficult. The iron door was shaken, and a child ran out with a weird smile on his face. His little hands were covered with glue, and he reached out to hug the seedlings. "Go to the other side. Get out of the way." Miyamu shouted loudly and ran away. He thought he was not a good guy, but to attack a child of this age, he couldn't do it. After all, it was that BD who did it. Neji jumped in through the broken window on the wall. Inside, two children ran towards this side with bare feet. The weird smiles on their faces made Neji feel sick. It was just like being on the scene of a supernatural horror movie, which made him very irritated. The key was to restrain his hands and not to kick him. "Be careful," Louise shouted quickly. Neji held the assault rifle in his hands with both hands, put it sideways, and hit the two children, sticking it to their hands. For small hands tightly grasped the gun body and stuck to it. Neji took off his sports coat and wrapped it around them. In an instant, he became the guest and restricted their movements. It was that BD who did it. Neji stood up and cursed irritably, walking towards Louise. "Excuse me, are you? I am a senior detective affiliated with the Gotham Police Department. Neji. Nice to meet you, but this is not the place to talk." Neji looked at the glue wrapped around Louise's hand, and then glanced at the honest Clark. "This Superman, is he playing?" As we all know, Superman Clark usually has three forms. When Louise is by his side, when Louise was kidnapped, when Louise is away. "Thank you, Officer Neji." Clark thanked him politely. He looked like a reassuring and honest child. "Okay." Neji couldn't say anything. Pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger was a part of Clark's life. Neji stretched out his hand to tear open the shirt on his body, twisted it into a rope, and pulled it towards the adhesive on Louise's wrist. Ladies first. Pulling the two ends of the rope, the seedlings were like a big saw, slowly dividing the sticky dough into two halves. This thing is not very hard, so it needs to be cut stably. "By the way, who is the prisoner?" Neji asked distractedly while keeping his hands on his hands. He was a little curious about this case. "It's Anthony Scott, the Toyman's son." Louise broke free from the adhesive on her hands and was about to get up, but her feet were still bound by the adhesive. Neji continued to pull the rope, thinking to herself, he knew a little bit about the Toyman. But the Toyman's son, right? The Toyman is a bankrupt toy merchant who adds explosives to toys to cause destruction and robberies. The kid over there isn't a toy. The weird smile on his face is obviously a form of mental manipulation. Seeing the subtle change in expression on Neji's face, Clark, who looked sideways, explained, "Anthony is the son of Toy Man Winslow. Winslow died of cancer last month. Anthony came back and inherited the bankrupt toy factory, and also inherited the evil of the old Toy Man. Being reminded by him, Neji really remembered a person. He was indeed the son of Toy Man, but he was not Toy Man, rather, a second-generation puppet master. He is the assistant of the puppet master Barton Mathis, who caused a big incident in Gotham and was hunted by Neji and the others. Anthony Winston, abandoned by his mother. He has lacked maternal love since he was a child. He has a special kind of dependence and prayer for his beloved woman, begging her to become his mother and love him like a child. He is indeed a pervert in Gotham. If I remember correctly, Neji has also read his file. A medical student graduated from Gotham University, specializing in brain neurology. During his internship, he worked as an assistant to the puppet master Barton. Where are the others? Neji raised his head and asked. Louise just woke up from a dream and exclaimed, "Kate." Clark's expression behind her changed, and he immediately remembered that their colleague Miss Kate was in danger. However, he can't turn into Superman to save her at this time. If it's only Lois, he can make excuses. Their explosives run. Niji saw the flash of confusion in his eyes. When Clark quietly observed him, Niji was also observing Clark. The eye of true sight's blind angle range allowed Niji to see behind him and the surrounding situation without raising his head or turning around. He could clearly see the changes in Clark's expression. Therefore, Niji chose to give him a favor directly. Niji picked up Louise and ran outside. As he passed by, he pulled the two manipulated children out. "Clark, let me go, don't leave him." Louise, who was dragged away by Niji, heard Niji shout just now without any suspicion at all and looked at Clark, who was still sitting there in horror. It was as if he was worried that he would be blown into pieces in the next second. You might as well shout loudly to Superman and ask him to save Clark. "Help! Superman!" Meow Meow shouted without replying. This reminder should be enough. Just as he dragged Louise and ran out of the toy factory. When he ran there was an explosion and the roof of the entire toy factory was lifted off. Is it really going bad? Niji turned around in confusion. A blue figure is flying in the air with a red cloak behind him and a diamond-shaped logo with an S on his chest. Superman. When Louise saw this figure, she cried with joy because Superman held a figure in his arms and quickly disappeared. Niji squinted his eyes and smacked his lips with a strange expression. He suddenly discovered that Superman was also an actor. Louise may not have seen it, but Niji did. Superman was holding a doll model in his arms. On the side of the road, Jimmy, who had driven the Beetle into a ditch, and Jason were carrying the butt of the car and pushing the car up. "You're such a meow. Why did you just drive down the car?" Jason gritted his teeth, and the veins on his forehead popped out. He pushed the Beetle forward with both hands, but the slope was too steep. Of course, it was a good thing that there was no water in the ditch. Otherwise, both of them would have been soaked, and the car would have been scrapped. "I don't know either." Jimmy pouted. He tried his best to suck the milk, but the car didn't move up a bit. "Boys, it seems you are in trouble." Jason suddenly felt the weight on his hands lighten, and then he saw the Beetle flying. No. What Jason saw in the next second shocked his entire worldview. A guy wearing blue tights with a red cape behind him lifted the Beetle with one hand. One hand. How much does that car weigh? Even if a strong man came, he wouldn't be able to pick it up so easily, right? Compared to Jason, who was full of question marks, Jimmy, who was as tired as a dog, jumped up with joy after seeing Superman. Superman also showed a handsome smile, stretched out his hand to weigh the Beetle, and then threw it up. The Beetle flew up more than 100 meters high, spun 180 degrees in the air, turned 6 times, and fell down. Superman stretched out his hand, still with one hand, as if catching a piece of bread, and gently as putting down a baby, put the Beetle on the road. "I wish you all a pleasant journey." Superman moved his fingers on his forehead and instantly flew up, his cape turning into a red light. He went to save his colleague, Miss Kate. Some people may not know who is protecting the metropolis. What awaits him will be legal sanctions and punishment. Jason looked up at Superman flying across the sky and asked in disbelief, "Is that a plane?" "No, that's Superman," Jimmy said proudly. Chapter 69, Superman Seriously. How strong is Superman? Niji and the others haven't reached the place where Beetle parked yet. Superman had already taken him to Miss Kate's house and mistakenly recognized his mother's second-generation puppet master, Anthony Winston. Just like carrying a little chicken, he flew to the Metropolitan Prison, reached out and opened the prison wall, found an unoccupied single room, and threw Anthony into it. Before leaving, Superman plugged the wall back and reinforced it with laser eye welding. The guards in the prison were all holding coffee cups and standing neatly on the prison playground, looking up at Superman flying away. They were obviously very familiar with this scene. Sometimes, it's not really that they are incompetent, but when compared with Superman's efficiency, they seem very powerless. Moreover, the Metropolis prison has been welded and transformed many times by Superman, and the materials have changed so much that it is really invulnerable. Of course, No one here would be so crazy as to hire the world's top mercenaries to rob the prison. As we all know, Superman's body of steel is not just a title, but a person who lives up to his name. No one in Metropolis would be stupid enough to shoot Superman with guns and bullets, except for kryptonite bullets. Except for the idiot who came to snipe Superman last month and was sent to prison, there is no second idiot who did this. Even the bald Luthor, who is known as the pig's brain was stepped on, chose to take a laser gun and wear a mecha to challenge Superman. Although the mecha was torn to pieces by Superman, and the laser only reached the level of shaving Superman, at least it was in the right direction. Lifting this car with one hand? It's not that exaggerated. Niji held the steering wheel, and the Beetle drove, swaying on the road, listening to Jason's description of the situation. Niji is actually not surprised at all. Although Superman's power is set in different file sizes, it is infinite, not to mention lifting this Beetle with one hand. Superman can directly carry an airplane to fly in the sky, lift an oil drilling platform on the sea, and even lift a 20-story building behind it, transporting it along with the people inside. Those who cannot carry the plane are the people of the motherland, not Superman. At its peak, Superman's power can pull the entire Earth, shattering space barriers with one punch and affecting the multi-universe. In such a comparison, the Flash, who uses the Speed Force to travel through time and space and influence the creation of a multi-universe, is a bit aggrieved. Anyway, thank you. You are really a good policeman with a sense of justice. Louise, who was sitting in the back seat, said with a serious smile. I don't know if she's born with it, but this woman's psychological quality is so good that she can recover immediately after being brought back from the edge of life and death. If only everyone had a mentality like hers. Those so-called psychologists and psychiatrists are probably all out of work. It may be because of this that she seems so different. You're welcome. It is our duty to protect every citizen. Meowmoo said seriously, his bright eyes full of positive energy. By the way, Louise, Officer Niji is still a fan of Clark. The reason for coming here is to get Clark's autograph. Jimmy, who was sitting on the right side of the back seat, said quickly. They didn't look worried about Clark at all, because with Superman here, there would definitely be no problem, although this description feels a bit mythical. But in front of Superman, it's difficult to die. You never know how many cardiac resuscitations he can give you in 1 second. Even when Death God comes, you have to consider whether a fight with Superman is worth it, and then consider whether you can survive the fight. Really? The cute cornfield boy also has his own fans. It's really great, Louise said happily. Cornfield Boy is Clark's nickname. His family is a corn farmer and a country boy, but only Louise can say this name. Clark might not mind if someone called her that, but Miss Louise would definitely hit someone after all she had. I wonder if I would be honored to have Miss Louise, the chief reporter of the Daily Planet, sign an autograph for me. I really like your crime-fighting news. Niji, who was driving, took out the signature book from his pocket and handed it to the back. No problem. I'd love to. Louise reached out to take the signature book, opened it, took a pen, and signed her name on it, and also made a special mark. To the righteous Officer Niji, he is a good man. Haha, this is such an honor. Niji looked at the label above and smiled unexpectedly. Hey, Clark. Jimmy, who was looking towards the window, saw Clark standing on the roadside under the streetlight in front, and quickly reached out and waved. Clark held a blue suit jacket, a white shirt, and black-rimmed glasses in his arms, and he quickly reached out and swung his hands. The Beetle stopped next to him. As soon as Jimmy opened the door, Louise got out and looked Clark up and down. Superman sent me here. I think you will definitely come back from here, so I'll wait for you here. Clark touched his head with one hand and showed a simple smile, which made people look very down to earth. Next time, we should notify the police first. Louise walked next to Clark and tilted her head and smiled. Speaking of the Metropolitan Police, Niji and the others did report the crime, and they did dispatch the police. However, as soon as they got halfway, the prisoner was already sent to prison by Superman. By the way, let me introduce you. This is the police officer from Gotham, Niji. He saved my life. Louise extended her hand and introduced, not forgetting to mention that Niji rescued her from the factory bomb. Clark looked at Niji and nodded gratefully. The two of them looked at each other and smiled in a tacit understanding. Only the two of them knew the truth about the bomb in the factory. Clark, I am a fan of Daily Planet. I especially like what you wrote about environmental protection and peace, especially that article. We have mountains, rivers, and endless seas in the world, but we cannot protect a clean sky. You actually read that article, Clark said with some surprise. His supervision and hearing had confirmed that Niji was not lying, and his heartbeat and pulse did not fluctuate at all. Yes, it's deafening, especially in Gotham, where we rarely see the sky and the stars at night through the thick clouds. Niji nodded seriously. He had really read it. The reason why he remembered this article was entirely because it was the best article written by Superman. He could not stand the others. It's dry and even harder to swallow than Yilin magazine. At least Yilin has a wonderful clip of a Japanese who can drink toilet water after cleaning the toilet 7 times. As for Superman, it was written entirely like a textbook. Niji suspected that except for some professional people who could understand it, others could at most understand that the content was about environmental protection and peace. That was the first article I wrote. It was inadequate in many places and not professional enough. Clark said with some embarrassment. Okay. You two can have a nice chat later. Don't you feel hungry? Louise smiled. After she said this, Niji and the others remembered that the good guy didn't eat lunch or lunch. I'm going to treat you to the same restaurant as last time. Louise made a decision without waiting for their answer. This woman would always be fickle. But in the eyes of the boy in the cornfield next to her, Clark, she was the most perfect like this. Chapter 70, Los Angeles. Watchman, the restaurant was good. Niji and Jason, who had been hungry all day, just opened it up and had a meal. After all, it was better than the canned food in the car or the fast food on the street. This kind of home-cooked food, which is full and steaming, is obviously more delicious, especially since the two of them are still martial arts practitioners and have huge appetites. They had to replenish the dishes 3 times before they could barely eat enough. However, Louise was still very happy, and even suggested that Niji must participate in the big eater competition that a nearby fast food restaurant continues to launch if she has the opportunity. When checking out, Louise showed what the legendary little rich woman was and just swiped her card. The chief reporter of the Daily Planet has an absolutely sufficient salary, and Louise is also a workaholic and spends very little money. In contrast, Clark's suit shopping list requires him to buy 2 more suits every month. The cost of clothing is such that Clark is close to being a moonlighter. After all, it is impossible for him to carry the suit he wears with him every time he transforms. When he comes back to look for it, he rarely finds it again. After drinking and eating, Niji also got Clark's autograph as he wished, and they even took a photo together. Niji, where are you staying tonight? Jimmy asked. We plan to hit the road directly. I'm going to Star City. 2 of my friends are having a lawsuit there. I want to go there and take a look and take a vacation there. Niji shook the car key in his hand, and within 1 meal, they became familiar with each other. There was no need to mention the polite words for those gentlemen and ladies. They all called each other by their first names. Star City? It's really a good place for a vacation. Are you leaving tonight? Be careful when driving at night. Understood. Goodbye, everyone. Niji waved his hand and led Jason towards the parking lot. Jimmy remembered something and ran towards the other side. I didn't expect there to be such good people in Gotham, and they're not as bad as the legend says. Louise looked at Niji's back and said with a smile. Indeed. Clark nodded in agreement. In the parking lot, Meowmoo started the Beetle, the lights came on, and the Beetle slowly drove out of the parking lot. Jason leaned against the passenger seat, strapped on his seatbelt, and had a happy smile on his face. For a child his age, today was indeed an unusual day. Wait. Jimmy ran over holding something. Niji quickly parked the car, but Jimmy was not here to see him, but to see Jason. The window was lowered, and Jimmy handed in a box, which was a toy model of Superman. Jimmy grinned and said, Given to you. This is our guardian of Metropolis, Superman. As he spoke, Jimmy made a gesture like Superman flying into the sky. Jason couldn't help but laugh. He held the Superman toy. Although he couldn't put it down, he still said stubbornly, I'm past the age of playing with toys. Okay, take it and say thank you. Niji pressed Jason's head and rubbed it with a smile. Jason lowered his head and said, "Thank you." As the beetle drove away slowly, Jimmy held his hands in the shape of a trumpet and shouted in the direction, "Have a nice trip." The road was very quiet at night, and Meow Moo turned on the only high-tech device in the beetle, the tape player. Old rock songs were played from the speakers. Jason played with the Superman toy in his hand and asked curiously, "Is Superman real?" "Yes, it's true. He even ate with us." Niji responded with a smile. "Ah." Jason was frightened this time. "Go to bed early. We will arrive in Star City tomorrow. I missed my practice time tonight. I will make up for it tomorrow." Niji didn't discuss this issue too much, as long as he could be familiar with Superman. But looking at it now, he was more than just a familiar person. If something happens, just call Jimmy or Louise. Just because of tonight's favor, Superman will definitely follow. This is like a pretty good deal. The beetle is driving fast on the road, and the scenery at night is always monotonous and has a sense of desolation in the wild. At about 5 o'clock in the morning the next day, Niji couldn't help but yawned, and his sleep was a little upside down. When I see the bright horizon, I want to yawn. There is a fork in the road ahead, and there is a road sign next to it. To the left is Welcome to Los Angeles, and to the right is Welcome to Star City. Ding! Encounter hidden treasures. Discover obtainable items. Poof! Naomu, who was holding a bottle of mineral water and pouring it into his mouth, spurted it out in one gulp. Why did this thing suddenly buzz? Doubtless, Niji put on the brakes and stopped the beetle, feeling where his heart was pointing. Los Angeles. Niji pushed open the car door and got out of the car. When he closed the door, he glanced inside. Jason was holding the Superman toy, wearing a police uniform coat, leaning against the car window and sleeping soundly. Carefully closing the car door, Niji took out the cigarette case from his trouser pocket, took out a thin cigar, and held it in his mouth. He is not that obsessed with smoking, but he is used to holding something in his mouth to relieve his mood when he is thinking. Thin cigars with mint flavor, slightly better to smoke than cigarettes. Taking out the matches given by the store when buying cigarettes, lighting a thin cigar, and taking a deep breath, Niji looked towards Los Angeles. I was thinking in my mind that Los Angeles in the DC universe is not a famous place, and it does not have outstanding representative heroes. But in the last century, there were the first masked vigilantes here, and they were the first batch of spontaneously formed vigilantes during the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Order. In the beginning, the gangsters wore masks and committed crimes. There was no way to confirm that they were criminals, and there was no way to put them in jail and punish them with the law. Therefore, a group of police officers, as well as outstanding ordinary people, also put on strange clothes and masks to fight violence with violence. Among them is a vigilante named Captain Metropolis, who is Superman's former protector of the city. However, later on, these masked vigilantes were punished after being passed down for 2 generations. Masked actions are equivalent to breaking the law. No matter you are a gangster or a hero, you are violating the laws of the United States. So Batman is a criminal. But Superman is not, because Superman does not cover his face. Under pressure from the government and public opinion, these masked vigilantes have all retired, and now only one is still roaming around Los Angeles. A hero who never compromises even in the face of the end of the world. Rorschach. Wearing a constantly changing Rorschach mask on the face, also known as the Rorschach test, is a famous personality test pattern, and his title also came from this. What is a little different from the original DC universe is that this world does not have America's most powerful weapon, Dr. Manhattan. There would have been no such huge amounts of disaster, and Rorschach would not have died due to his uncompromising persistence. He is still a homeless man, carrying a small protest board and wandering the streets of Los Angeles. Niji threw the cigarette, but on the ground, and crushed it with his foot. If you think about it this way, there should be no surprises or major events in Los Angeles, so we could just make do with it. The point is, this thought in my mind keeps pointing there, and it is absolutely impossible to miss it or give up. Maybe you can still pick up the relics of those masked vigilantes. Anyway, they have retired, so they don't want them anymore. 3 times 5 divided by 2 is equal to a thing without an owner. If the Owl aircraft of the second generation of Night Owl is no longer needed, Niji is still willing to take over, although it is unlikely. Chapter 71, Rorschach. Are you awake? Just in time to have some breakfast. There's a Chinese restaurant here, and Xylong Bao is very delicious. Niji put a bag of hot steamed dumplings on the console next to him, took one and stuffed it into his mouth, and also held a cup of soy milk in his hand. Jason, who had just woken up, blinked and turned to look out the window. The Beetle was parked in a large park. There was a cathedral across the street not far away, and the sound of hymns was being recited over there. We have arrived in Star City. Jason's hazy sleepiness was swept away, and he quickly lowered the window and looked outside. No, this is Los Angeles. Star City is on the other side. Meow Moo took a sip of the bean juice and looked toward the cathedral on the other side of the road, staring at the century-old tree at the door of the church. The ownerless treasure he was looking for was buried under that tree. He went to look at it while buying breakfast. It's not easy to dig out. It's been buried under the tree roots for I don't know how many years, but it should be good stuff. Moreover, the church is quite grand, and many people come to worship. It is not easy to start during the day. Niji asked the priest of the church and found that the church would close at 6 o'clock in the evening, so he could start at that time. For this reason, he also bought an axe and a shovel, as well as a mask. It would be a shame if he was caught. But if you put on a mask, that means, if you arrest Lu Sun, what does it have to do with me? Zhou Shorin? Los Angeles? What are we doing here? Jason leaned against the window, reached for the Xylong Bao in the bag, stuffed it into his mouth, and started eating, his eyes constantly scanning outside. He had never been out of Gotham and was curious about everything. He even wanted to run into the church over there to see what it was like inside. Take a walk around, learn a lot, and eat quickly. After dinner, I will take you here to play and see the scenery. Niji didn't go into details and just changed the topic. He planned to search here again to see if he could gain anything else. For example, try a fight with Rorschach. Even though he has the Iron Monkey Fist, Niji can be said to be a master. However, combat experience is still somewhat lacking. When Bruce Wayne traveled around the world, he even dared to enter prisons in troubled areas in order to fight. In the end, he was defeated in the fight, and the prison guards put him in a solitary cell. Behind him was the leader of the demons, Lei Xiaogu, who personally gave him moves. His combat experience had already reached the level of a fighting master. When he came out this time, Niji also planned to have a good training. He originally planned to find those masters and try to fight. After all, other places are not as omnipotent and perverted as Gotham, but they can still be reasonable. As for why not fight Superman, is that as outrageous as trying to strangle a robot with your arms until it suffocates? Using fists to hit a man of steel that can't be hurt by bullets? It's time to go to Arkham Asylum. This thing is delicious. What is it called? Jason took 2 more Xylong Bao and stuffed them into his mouth. His mouth was full of oil. Xylong Bao, I want to eat Chinese food at noon. I saw a good Chinese restaurant. I'll make a meal of it. I'll give you soy milk with sugar. Niji took a glass of soy milk, handed it to Jason, and continued to look at the cathedral over there, thinking about his preparations. After the two of them finished breakfast, Niji started driving around the city, trying to figure out how to find Rorschach. The guy had light red hair and was carrying a protest sign. There was a parade over there, so he walked over there. During the day, he was just an ordinary homeless man, living in a trash can in an alley and wandering aimlessly. In the evening, put on a brown windbreaker, a narrow-brimmed round hat of the same color. Put on that face Rorschach and come out. Compared with Batman's not killing, Superman's kindness. Rorschach, who debuted during the Cold War, did not have any kindness for women, but was a fierce group. Everything in his hands was the most destructive weapon. If he took action, he would be killed or injured. Do-do-do. Niji hummed, turning his head to look at the crowd marching in front of the city hall. The crowd was in a mess. I don't know why they came out to march. The signs they held were not unified. There were even signs of nuclear crisis during the Cold War. Nuclear crisis? Niji's head, which was originally tilted to one side, tilted over, and he could see clearly the faded sign, which said the end of mankind, the horror of nuclear crisis, and the end of the world. The man carrying the sign was a man in a torn jacket, holding a piece of bread in his hand and eating it. He looked to be in his 40s. Niji narrowed his eyes. Light red hair, yes. Tramp, yes. He was wearing shabby clothes. The leather on his jacket was all peeled off, his jeans were full of patches, and he also had a pair of large leather shoes that didn't fit. All these items match up. Rorschach found it. But how to get close? This guy's vigilance is no less than Batman, and even worse. After all, the most Batman can do is break your arms and legs and make you go to jail for a few years. If you're lucky, you might not go to jail. But Rorschach can really kill you. Seedlings are a bit out of ideas. You can't just fish for law enforcement, right? Thinking of this, Meow turned to look at Jason, who was leaning out the car window with a smile on his face. Rorschach, who was carrying the sign, followed the crowd and moved the sign to another shoulder, chewing the crumbs in his mouth. Compared with those masked vigilantes who have retired or even become famous, his life is very ordinary and very free. Some of their group worked as dogs for the government. Some kept their names anonymous, and some became famous, but he was the only one who did not compromise. Even with a wanted order, he would appear at night and act chivalrously. Walter Kovacs is his real name, but in his mind, Rorschach is his name. Well, can you show me your brand? A young man in a black coat ran over, stopped him, and reached out for the sign on his shoulder. Luo Xia glanced at the young man and was about to walk away from him. Suddenly, the young man reached out and grabbed the sign on his shoulder, turned around, and ran away. Luo Xia was stunned for 2 seconds and immediately chased after him. He was stunned because there were still people snatching things from the homeless man. The boy ran very fast, and his movements were very agile. If Luo Xia hadn't been chasing him so closely, he would have been thrown away in an alley. As soon as Rorschach chased him in, he saw the sign thrown aside, and there was a person standing in the middle in front of him. Rorschach, you violated the mask law. Now, I want to arrest you and bring you to justice. What else do you want to say? Niji held the police badge in his hand and shouted righteously. Rorschach looked at the police badge in Niji's hand. He was sure with just one glance that it was genuine. However, the label of GCPD meant it was not the Los Angeles Police. Look at the abbreviation. It was the Gotham Police. While looking at Rorschach's expression, Niji quietly touched the golden 6-pointed star wrapped around her wrist. Her vision widened. Fight with me, and if you win, I'll let you go. Meow clenched his fists and formed a standard boxing frame. He could advance to attack, retreat to defend, and he was ready to fight. On the fire stairs on one side, Jason was lying on it, looking at the posture of seedlings below, and Rorschach standing on the other side. Rorschach thought for a few seconds. You know me? Almost no one knows his identity, and no one cares about a homeless man. Even his former comrades do not know his true identity, let alone find him. If you beat me, I will tell you the answer. Niji waved his hand provocatively, with a majestic aura on his body. This showed that he was showing 100% of his strength, except that he did not draw his gun. Rorschach looked here, turned around and walked to the trash can on the side, grabbed a glass bottle and smashed it against the wall. The glass bottle with only half left was extremely sharp, and he was walking towards this side with it in his hand. Seeing this scene, Niji was a little stunned. His style of painting was a little wrong, but he didn't have time to think about it, because the glass wine bottle had been taken out by Rorschach and flew directly towards Niji's face. My day. Niji quickly leaned back, and the glass wine bottle almost rubbed his hair and flew over, and he just stood up. Rorschach hit him with a punch. The position was extremely tricky. He hit the right rib, and the punch directly exploded the liver. Niji gritted his teeth and groaned in pain, and the veins on his forehead popped out. It was too painful, but he had a strong enough physique. This pain also aroused the ferocity of Meow, and blood suddenly penetrated his pupils. He was full of murderous intent and punched directly without any mercy. But Rorschach moved faster. No, it should be said that he had more fighting experience. The second before Niji threw a punch, Rorschach saw the change in Niji's shoulder and turned his head to avoid the punch. Like the sound of tearing cloth, Niji's punch directly brought up a strong wind, just like the mysterious feeling before. Rorschach was also surprised by Niji's punch, but he immediately counterattacked and grabbed Niji's wrist with one hand. Whether it was a capture or a block, he would have the upper hand. The other hand was like a thumb, and it was directly poked at the elbow socket of Miaomu. With a twist, Miaomu's arm was about to be broken. How could Niji let him succeed? When he raised his leg, he hit his knee. Rorschach also raised his leg at the same time, and the two legs collided with each other with a thud. Niji roared angrily, raised his legs, and hit his knees again. And the two consecutive knocks made Rorschach fall a little behind the competition. So he pinched Niji's wrist and grabbed the arm locked Niji's arms behind his back to control him. But Niji's other arm directly elbowed him, followed the trend, and threw his fist, and the fierce iron monkey fist exploded with strength. The fist thrown by Niji was like a meteor hammer. Rorschach raised his hand to block and received a hard punch, which made his arm tremble. A powerful enemy, Rorschach thought, but he has encountered many powerful enemies, and even the magician Archmage has been dealt with by him. What he relies on is not his fists, but Luoxia grabbed the two trash can lids on one side and hit Miaomu on the head with a bang. It was like being hit by two gongs. The seeds in Miaomu's head made a buzzing sound. Rorschach is an ordinary person without super abilities, except for his tempered willpower, endurance, and reflexes that are beyond ordinary people. His strongest strength is his adaptability. Anything in his hands is a weapon that can cause death or injury, whether it is hairspray, chili peppers, broken wine bottles, forks, oil pans, or toilets. In his hands, they're all weapons. Chapter 72 Street Fighting. Damn it. Did I offend Jackie Chan, the fighting king of Furniture City? So cruel? Niji cursed in his heart and raised his hands to keep resisting. The beatings he had received in his 2 lifetimes combined were not as many as this one. His nose was really bruised and his face was swollen. Even without looking at it, Niji could feel that he was absolutely bruised, especially on the ribs. Luoxia was looking for the most painful parts to hit. If Niji hadn't been able to hold his breath and carry it down, he would have suffered internal injuries and vomited blood. Niji quickly backed away, kicking away the wooden box next to him to block the glass bottle flying towards him. There was a crackling sound, and a glass wine bottle shattered on the floor. Before Niji could fight back or start a counterattack, Luoxia came over again and swiped her head on, close to the ground. The glass fragments on the ground flew towards Miaomu like shotguns. The frightened Miaomu was so scared that he felt a chill on his back. He hurriedly grabbed his coat and slapped it. The coat was cut into strips of rags by glass fragments. During this delay, Rorschach rushed over, punched Niji on the left side of his face, and immediately punched him again. Niji gritted his teeth and swung a straight punch, hitting Luoxia's chest and knocking him away. He raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. During the fight, Niji also gained an understanding of Rorschach's strength and also gained a new understanding of his own strength. His physical fitness and various abilities are better than Rorschach's, especially under the effect of the Eye of Truth. But Rorschach's fighting quality was too high, and Niji's damage to him was almost not 100% powerful. At first, Niji thought that this guy was faster than him, so he couldn't hit it and couldn't do any damage. But now Niji has come to think of it, Rorschach is not fast and is even slower than him. It's just that Rorschach reacted quickly and kept attacking. He used every opportunity to throw a few fierce and unusual punches, which made Niji keep defending, so he didn't feel it. Do you still want to fight? I won't hold back. Niji moved the corners of his mouth, tore off the white shirt on his body, and threw it on the ground with his backhand, revealing a body of muscles as strong as steel plates, with some vague scars on them. The stitched and healed scar on the back is as close to the skin as a zipper. Rorschach stood up from the ground, raised his hand and beat his chest twice, and spat out a mouthful of bloody spit. His face was like facial paralysis, without any expression. He raised his hand and took off the tattered jacket on his body, and took out a white hooded mask with ink stains from his arms. Putting it on his head, Rorschach took a serious look at Niji, then pulled the hood off hard and black ink stains appeared on his face, forming an ever-changing pattern. Rorschach's hoarse voice sounded. "Tell me, what did you see?" Niji glanced at Rorschach's face, and the ink stains changed, and suddenly the mask turned into a ferocious and terrifying lion. I just felt a chill on my hair. The next moment, Meow Moo felt a pain in his chest, a sweetness in his throat, and a mouthful of blood flowed upward, holding it in his mouth. Poof! Niji spat out a mouthful of blood mist. Rorschach clenched his fist and hit Niji's chest. The ink stains on Rorschach's mask changed with his emotions. The personality test, formed by the ink marks on the mask, changes in a certain order, which will make people fearful and lead to a trance state. People are always afraid of seeing their true heart. Still early, Niji gritted his teeth and shouted. His white teeth were covered with a layer of blood, making him look even more ferocious. Swinging his arm forward to strike, the arm armor on his arm bounced off the blade. 3 blades cut through the air and slashed towards Rorschach. Rorschach was not surprised at all. He also had a friend who loved inventing, just like this one. Rorschach suddenly stepped back, and there was a rope pulling him behind him, making him leave quickly, just enough for Niji to miss. What? Niji quickly looked up and realized. When Rorschach rushed over, he used his grappling gun to wrap around the stairs beside the wall, and then used the mobile device on it to leave quickly. Speaking of which, the grappling gun is not exclusive to Batman, but the only one who can play tricks with the grappling gun is Batman. You can't beat me, at least for now. Rorschach retracted his grappling gun, squatted on the railing of the fire staircase, looked at Meow Moo, and asked, "Can you tell me now, how do you know my identity?" Jason was upstairs, holding a brick, tiptoeing over, and smashed it down. With a bang, the bricks were caught in front of the hook gun, and the triangular hook fired was smashed into pieces, and pieces of bricks fell to the ground. "Jason, don't act rashly." Meow Moo scolded sharply, making Jason retreat a little unwillingly. Niji raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, took a deep breath, and spit out the blood in his mouth. Looking up at Luo Xia, "I really underestimated him. The sign you held is too conspicuous. There is no nuclear war at this time. If you want to protest, please change it." "It's not that." "How do you know me?" Niji frowned. "This is really hard to make up, but he also had a way. I checked it from the internet. You probably don't know that you dangerous people are all registered by the government." Seeing the changing ink stains on Rorschach's face, Niji forced herself not to look at it, moved her eyes away, and said, "I came here because of the reputation. I happened to be passing through Los Angeles and wanted to see what kind of person the uncompromising Rorschach is." Rorschach remained silent, but he still believed Niji's statement in his heart because he couldn't be more clear about America's urinary nature. To this day, his wanted warrant for a reward is still hanging at the door of the police station, although he doesn't care. "You are a policeman, but your moves don't look like them. Who is your master?" Rorschach asked. This was also what he was curious about, because Niji's fights were unorganized. Although he had a foundation in Iron Monkey Fist, his fighting routines were still street fighting moves. Direct and straightforward, but not ruthless enough. He is very similar to Rorschach. He was also born in the wild, and he continued to improve in battles, and finally integrated. "I don't have a master, I just trained all by myself. I got a boxing inheritance and have some foundation. I feel very proud." Niji admitted his shortcomings simply. Rorschach pondered for a moment. Seeing the sudden change of ink stains on his face, Niji quickly shouted in pursuit of victory, "Can you teach me 2 moves?" "No." Rorschach refused very simply. "Then can you fight with me again?" Niji raised his head and asked. "We will still be here at 12 o'clock tonight. However, I won't fight you. If you want, you can come again." After Rorschach said this, he jumped down the stairs, turned around, and left here without looking back. Niji looked at the alley that was swept by a tornado, picked up the white shirt on the ground, threw it down, and put it on again. "Can't you beat him?" Jason came down the stairs and handed the black coat he was wearing to Niji. "I can beat you. Next time," Niji said in a deep voice, but looked down at the bruises and bruises on his body. Niji smiled sadly and said, "This is so unlucky. I even wonder if I stepped on the black cat's tail." dropped the mirror, or fell into the gypsy's bad luck curse. It's really bad. I will take revenge on you, Jason said seriously. Niji looked up at him, raised his hand, and rubbed Jason's head, messing up his hair. Are you punching or kicking the nursing home? I haven't let you swing my fist today. Practice your boxing skills before eating. Chapter 73 condensed in the Beetle parked in front of a Chinese restaurant, occupying the last parking space. The traffic policeman who passed by and issued a ticket was stunned for a moment, and he took back the ticket that he had torn off. In the restaurant, Niji and Jason each held a braised pork knuckle and ate it all. A very special dish, Farewell My Concubine, was stewed in the kitchen behind. The black-boned chicken stewed turtle was modified by the boss, who followed the local customs and turned it into bison whip stewed snapping turtle, which is a great supplement. The seedlings also gave a little more money, and the boss stuffed a handful of American ginseng into the pot and poured in half a bucket of wolfberry. Turning to Niji, he gave Niji a look that even a man could understand, and the boss even said in a mean manner, I guarantee that even the bed legs will be broken by night. In fact, Niji wanted to replenish the blood he vomited and take some medicinal food to restore the effect. But this is considered replenishment, right? It's none of his business. Just eat it, and that's it. Supplementing it is not supplementing it. However, with an elbow on his stomach, Miamu wiped his greasy hands, looked at Jason, who was still struggling with fat, and raised his hand to order 2 bottles of carbonated drinks to relieve the greasiness. Uncle, take out your mirror quickly and call for help. A fat man in a vest rushed in with a few people behind him. What's wrong? The boss walked out of the kitchen with a kitchen knife and looked at the fat man and those people a little confused. He thought he was here to cause trouble. No, Uncle, you have to lend us your big mirror. Xiaomei's family on the top floor needs it urgently. The master is here and wants to set up an altar to catch ghosts. The fat man gestured and said, It's missing a big mirror. I remember you have one here. That's the one. The fat man pointed at the large mirror hanging on the wall, which was as tall as a person and had a bronze frame on the outside. Xiao Meijia, is that crazy girl? The boss thought as he recalled it, and it seemed that there was indeed such a person. Then take it quickly, the boss quickly urged. Hey, help. The fat man quickly called to the people behind him, and together with the shop owner, he took off the mirror from the wall, carried it, and ran outside. Ghost hunting? Do you still have this thing here? Niji held a thin cigar in his mouth and leaned on the chair with a smile. Hey, don't mention it. A teenage girl is possessed by an evil spirit. She doesn't recognize her relatives. The shop owner waved his hand and quickly ran to the kitchen to take care of his pot of bawang daba decoction. Master, is there really a ghost? Jason held the bones with both hands, chewing on the soft and brittle bones, and was covered in oil. I don't know if there are ghosts or not, but demons do exist. Niji held a thin cigar in his mouth, crossed his legs, and began to brag. However, there are relatively few supernatural ghosts in the DC universe, but there are no shortage of things like demons and zombies. There's also an undead zombie named Solomon in the Gotham Swamp. Moreover, the magic side is not uncommon. The Batghouls and the Bat family are masters in fighting magical crimes, although they are proficient in computer technology. Here comes the chicken soup. The shop owner happily ran over with a casserole and slowly placed it on the table. There are children here. What kind of chicken soup? Is there chicken in it? Niji looked at the casserole and couldn't help but complain. This one is much better than a chicken. It's very impressive. The shop owner didn't care about Niji's complaints at all and opened the lid of the pot directly, and the steam was steaming with the aroma of medicine and food. Anyone who smells it can feel their blood boiling. It was also the first time for Jason to smell this smell. He moved his head forward and twitched his nose vigorously, but was pushed aside by Niji. Child, go aside. The boss will give him a hoof to grind his teeth. Niji rolled up his sleeves, picked up a spoon, and was about to taste it. I'm full. Jason started. There was a loud bang and crash outside, like an object being thrown from a high altitude and breaking something. Niji and the others all turned their heads to look. The shop owner reacted the fastest and hurriedly ran out, then wailed. OMG! Niji quickly grabbed a chair and ran outside. When Jason was about to get up, he looked at the fragrant casserole and the seedlings running out. He quickly picked up a spoon, scooped a spoonful of soup, and poured it into his mouth. I smacked my lips with unfinished thoughts. I couldn't taste anything, so I took another spoonful to try. What the hell? Who smashed my car? Niji cursed at the top of his lungs outside, looking up at the stairs. On the top floor of the 6th floor, a window was open, and there were people looking down at what was thrown out of that window. They all smashed into his car, and broken glass flew all over the floor. Get off here. You think I'm easy to bully? Niji shouted upwards, raising his foot to crush the broken glass on the ground. He was already in a bad mood, but now he had a chance to vent. Niji raised his hand and slapped the beetle. The beetle suddenly jumped and bounced on the spot. The seedlings and the store owner were so frightened that they thought the tire had exploded. But it seems okay. Oh, isn't this my mirror? The store owner looked at the bronze frame on the roof of the beetle, slapped his thigh, and cursed with Niji. Sorry, I reminded you to move the car, but it seems like it didn't get through. In the building next to it, a man wearing a suit and tie, with a cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth and a lazy air, glanced sideways at the young man who got into the taxi with a bang on the other side of the street and shook his head helplessly. Who are you? Niji looked at the man in front of him and frowned. Just after he appeared, Niji's sixth sense was desperately warning that his life was not in danger. Just looking at him, I felt something was wrong. The man held out his cigarette and was about to introduce himself, but his eyes suddenly fell on Niji's wrist. The golden six-pointed star tied to his wrist as a makeshift bracelet suddenly came into view of the man. He couldn't take his eyes off it, just like seeing a peerless beauty. Niji looked down along his line of sight, quickly retracted the bracelet into her sleeve, and looked at the man with fear. At the same time, Niji reached for his waist and grasped the pistol grip of the Smith & Wesson M500. The atmosphere was tense for a moment. Even the store owner felt something was wrong and quickly stepped aside, as if he would run away if he disagreed. The man took a drag of the cigarette, but in his hand, threw it on the ground, stretched out his hand with a smile, and said, "My name is John Condenstein. I am a professional exorcist. Get out. Otherwise, I'll blow your head off immediately." Just after Condenstein said his name, before he could finish the rest of his words, Niji pulled out the M500 revolver and put it on his head. A finger could be inserted into the barrel of a large caliber gun, and it was pressed against his head. Even Condenstein was stunned for a moment. He quickly thought in his mind whether he had deceived this guy somewhere. Otherwise, why would his vigilance be so high? Niji nervously grasped the handle of the pistol, fearing that he might accidentally blow this guy's head off. This is John Condenstein, who signed a contract with Satan, the first fallen demon and Lord of Hell. If he dies, Satan will come in person immediately to collect his soul. Moreover, Niji also knows why his sixth sense senses something is wrong. This BD is the lonely star of heaven. Anyone who hangs out with him will have a bad end. And this guy is also a top liar. He is the god of heaven and the Satan of hell. There is nothing he dares to deceive. Moreover, this guy has sold his soul 3 times. 3 times. At the same time, he is also a top black magic master. Although his deception is more powerful than magic, he is the second most terrifying challenger after Batman. A duel can be planned for more than 10 years. The door of the Chinese restaurant was violently pushed open, and Niji hurriedly walked in, still holding a revolver in his hand. "Jason, let's leave quickly. We can't stay in this stupid place." Niji shouted, but didn't hear Jason's voice. He quickly ran over to take a look, and his heart almost stopped. "Master, I'm going to die." Jason put his hands together and covered his face. The blood spurting out of his nose was like a flood that could not be stopped. Chapter 74, God's Gold Coin. It's almost time. Let's do it. Niji looked at the watch on the car. It was already 7 o'clock in the evening, and the church across the street had turned off the lights. Only a few lights inside were still on, and from a distance, they looked like candles burning. Niji put on a hood, got out of the car, and opened the trunk. It turned out that the trunk seemed to be stuck. What the hell? Was it broken? Meow Moo muttered to himself, then raised his foot and kicked the trunk. Today was a really unlucky day. After meeting Kondenstein, Niji had already made up his mind to dig up the things, and they would run away. I really can't stay in Los Angeles anymore. Who knows why Kondenstein is here? Really, Niji thought to himself. With a bang, the trunk door popped open. Jason looked in the rearview mirror, pulled out the gauze from his nose, replaced it with two more, put on a mask, and got out of the car. Meow Moo carried the axe and shovel and was ready. The two of them went ahead as planned. Jason went over to watch while Meow Moo worked. Jason was carrying a glass wine bottle and pretending to be a drunkard walking around. Although he was smaller, he looked like that. If he didn't win the Best Actor award, it would be really humiliating. If Jason knew what Niji was thinking, he would definitely laugh out loud. He was wandering the streets of Gotham, and he had never seen any kind of drunkard. I've even seen drug addicts who got high and ran into traffic and were knocked out more than once. Meow Moo quietly ran under the big tree, closed his eyes, and determined the location of the thing, then picked up the axe and chopped it down. It was a bit of a miscalculation. He should have just bought a chainsaw. Considering the noise, now the noise was even louder. Sweat broke out on Meow Moo's forehead, and he swung the round axe and chopped wildly. It took only a minute to cut down, and a hole was made under the root of the tree. I inserted a pointed shovel into it, twisted it, and pushed out a handful of soil. He also encountered a hard object. The seedling quickly swung the axe at the root of the tree and hit the axe twice more, and the object came out. Meow Moo stretched out his hand and grabbed it inside. It was a box. It felt very solid like wood. Things should be inside. Grabbing the box, Niji gritted his teeth and pulled hard, pulling the box out, taking advantage of the candlelight shining in the church. It could be seen that this was a dark red wooden box. Meow Moo opened the lid and found only one gold coin inside. He took it into his hand. God's gold coin, an alchemy wishing object with a 100% chance of realizing the wish on the front and a 50% chance of realizing the wish on the reverse side. It is a masterpiece of an alchemy master, but his wish did not come true. Make a wish. Niji held the gold coin and raised his hand to grab the necklace that was hung around his neck. There was also a Wayne ring on it, which was also used to make a wish, but that one was a relic. This is a wish? 100% heads, 50% tails? Niji looked at the gold coin. It exuded the light of gold under the bright light. On the front was a sacred angel with wings spread, and on the back was only half of the angel pattern, and the other half was the devil. What are you looking at? Suddenly a voice sounded in Meow Moo's ears. Meow Moo jumped up in fright and punched him. The man bent down and picked up the gold coins on the ground, just in time to avoid Niji's punch, just like a coincidence. Niji swept over with another leg, and the man looked up with the gold coins, as if he wanted to get close to the light to see. He dodged this leg sweep just in time. At this moment, Niji felt like running away. He didn't believe in any damn coincidences. And he didn't feel this person coming at all. Although the effect of the Eye of Truth had ended, Niji didn't hear a sound at all, and his sixth sense didn't respond. This person seemed to appear out of nowhere. What's more, Jason didn't sound an alarm. In this case, there are only two possibilities. First, this person is very strong. In the second case, the other party is not a human being. Niji put aside the idea of drawing a gun and shot, and looked seriously at the man in front of him. He was wearing a black tuxedo. His age could not be seen, but this man looked very special. The face is as perfect as a sculpture carved by a knife and an axe. It is a very neutral face, with both the femininity of a woman and the strength of a man. It is hard to imagine that there is such a person with such a perfect length. Is this your thing? The man turned around and asked, with a faint smile on his face, but his eyes were empty. Niji couldn't see her own reflection in his eyes after hearing his inquiry. Niji thought for a moment and then admitted, "This is mine. A very interesting gadget." The man raised his hand and looked at the angel on the front of the gold coin, then at the half angel on the back, and finally at the half demon with a disdainful smile on his face. "Give it back to you. Don't dig holes at night anymore." The gold coin drew an arc in the air and fell steadily into Meow Moo's hands. Meow Moo looked at the person in front of him, nodded politely, and quickly turned around and ran out. Jason was leaning on the side of the road, shaking a bottle of wine, watching Niji running over, and said quickly, Did you get the stuff? How the hell are you looking at people? They've all passed by. You didn't even give a warning. Niji complained angrily, dragging Jason away quickly, almost starting to run. People. Jason turned to look at the big tree, scanning the empty space. Or was there anyone? Miamu hurriedly dragged Jason and ran to the beetle. He reached out to pull the car door, but the door was stuck again. Miamu was so angry and anxious that he kicked it and the door was deformed. The car door opened with a click and Jason was stuffed in. Jason also sensed something was wrong, so he climbed into the passenger seat in an extremely cooperative manner. Sitting in the passenger seat, he quickly asked, "What's wrong?" "Don't ask, nothing happened." Niji sat in the driver's seat, took a long breath, closed the door, turned around, and drove away. It wasn't until the beetle drove 2 blocks away that Niji's mood relaxed, and he began to think about, what did you encounter just now? Human? Ghost? Monster? Demon? Or angel? Looking back at that disdainful smile, Niji was basically sure whether this was angel or the angel in the human world. Angels do exist in the DC universe, and there are also a large number of half-angels who maintain the balance between heaven and hell. But compared to this, Niji looked at the god's gold coin in his hand, and the scenes he encountered today flashed before his eyes. The red light turned on at the intersection ahead. Niji stepped on the brakes and stopped the beetle. He flicked the god's gold coin away with his fingers, perhaps granting his wish. "I want to become stronger. No strengthening, no facey, no angel, no devil. If I get angry, I will destroy them all." The lion in Niji's heart roared, and the god's gold coin flew high and fell in the air, head on. The wings spread angel on the front seems to be burning, and a devil's pattern emerges on it. Ding! The adventure treasure has been refreshed. Please explore by yourself. 3 consecutive sounds echoed in Miamu's mind. Miamu just looked at the gold coins in his hand that changed shape. The 100% wish on the front is gone, and on the back. Niji turned the gold coin over and looked at the half-angel pattern. There is only a 50% wish success rate. And looking at the devil pattern on the front, Niji didn't know if it was a psychological effect. He could see the eyes of the devil inside, eyes like flowing magma. "Here you go, keep it well." Niji flicked the god's gold coin in his hand and fell into Jason's hand. There is a 50% chance that a wish can be fulfilled. Don't make a wish now. There is a 150% chance that it will not succeed. Save it for when you encounter difficulties that you cannot overcome. Jason looked at the gold coins in his hand, and then at the look on Niji's face as he drove. He didn't know if it was an illusion. He felt that Niji had changed a little, but he couldn't tell where. But Jason held this gold coin tightly in his hand. Chapter 75, running at night, the beetle staggered into the alley. As soon as it stopped, Niji slammed the steering wheel. What happened tonight was terrible. There was something wrong with this old car. It was fine when we drove here. Now it either can't open the door or the engine is making a bubbling sound. Pushing open the car door, Miamu got out of the car and looked at the alley illuminated by the car lights. It was empty and there was no one around. "You were almost late." Rorschach's voice came from the stairs on one side, and Niji turned around to look. Rorschach, wearing a trench coat, a round hat, and an ink-smeared mask, walked down the stairs. The brown trench coat on him looked particularly like a detective in an old-fashioned movie. Niji took out the lighter from his pocket, lit the thin cigar in the corner of his mouth, and took a deep breath. "I'm not lucky today. How about another fight?" Niji held the cigarette in his hand, tilted his head, and said, exhaling a puff of smoke from his mouth, which dissipated under the illumination of the car lights. "I told you I won't fight you tonight. If you want to fight, you can follow me." Rorschach turned and walked away. There was a high wall over there, more than 3 meters high. Luo Xia rushed over in 2 steps, stepped on the wall, and jumped up with a boost. Stepping on the top of the wall, Luo Xia turned to look at Miao Mu. Niji threw the cigarette in his mouth on the ground, took out a pistol from his waist, which was a Glock 17. He walked to the car, threw it to Jason through the window, and touched his head. "Go to bed early." After saying that, Niji turned around and rushed towards the wall, imitating Rorschach, stepping on the wall and jumping upward with help, but he was not as nimble and agile as Rorschach. However, Niji's arms were very strong. He directly grabbed the top of the wall and pulled himself up like a horizontal bar. Rorschach stood aside and didn't say anything. He just jumped up again and jumped to the upstairs opposite the wall. He reached out and grabbed the balcony on the second floor and gradually climbed up. As nimble as a monkey, he climbed to the top of the building in the blink of an eye. Without waiting, Miamu lowered his body, tensed the muscles in his legs, and jumped hard. This time I grabbed the balcony and climbed up layer by layer. Don't rely too much on external objects, otherwise you'll be far behind. Luo Xia, who was standing on the rooftop of the building, said as he looked at the seedlings that had just climbed up, "I know, that's why I want to change." Niji didn't defend himself. He just took off his coat and tied it around his waist. "Follow me." Rorschach ran towards the other side of the building. At the edge of the building, I jumped up and saw a wide street below and a higher floor on the opposite side, which was a full 3 floors higher than here. If it was normal, Rorschach would take out his grappling gun and fly away, but tonight he didn't want to use that. Instead, he stepped on the wall with both feet, and his powerful explosive power was like reversing gravity. Let him run straight up for 2 steps on the wall, and then jump to the rooftop in just 2 steps. This situation is very taxing on the body. But Rorschach turned to look at Niji, who was standing on the opposite floor. The ink-stained mask on his face changed. He wanted to see this Gotham high-ranking police detective climb out of the slums. Known as a police hero, a man who is not afraid of life and death in order to catch criminals. Does he have the courage and ability? Regarding the information about the seedlings, Rorschach learned about the existence of all records from his friends at noon. Every superhero has his own source of information. Although Rorschach is alone, his old friends who have returned home are still happy to provide him with intelligence and information support. Niji jumped over, almost without any hesitation, and didn't care that it was a 6-story rooftop, and just jumped forward. However, with Niji's explosive power and speed, he was unable to hit the wall with his feet and jumped again. His body fell down like a submerged stone. But Niji also had his own way. He clenched his fists and smashed the glass with one punch. Grasping the broken glass, Niji jumped up, stretched out his hand, and punched it again. The thick glass was shattered like a biscuit in front of the fist with strong wind. On the 3rd floor, Niji punched 3 times and completed the final leap before grabbing the edge of the rooftop with bloody fingers. Rorschach stood aside, looking at the gnashing seedlings, and pulled himself up little by little with both hands. The skin on his hands was torn open by the glass and dripping with blood. Niji tore open his shirt with his teeth and wrapped it around his hands as a bandage. As if it was not his own flesh and he couldn't feel the pain, Niji didn't even frown and was very silent. Compared with the physical pain, his tough character that refused to admit defeat made it even more unbearable for him to feel today's frustration. Moreover, Niji raised his head and glanced at Rorschach. This silent guy seemed to want to teach him something. Although I don't know what Rorschach is thinking, the current seedlings don't want to miss any opportunity to become stronger. Rorschach waited for Niji to wrap his hands before running forward again, jumping again. But this time, Rorschach jumped from the upstairs, slowed down with his body, and fell to the cluster of residential apartments below. Niji followed closely behind, and the 2 of them ran one after the other, their speed gradually getting faster, running wildly on the roofs of buildings, streets, alleys, and stairs. Rorschach ignored Niji from now on, and instead used all his strength to run, jump, and use his body to make difficult moves that even gymnasts couldn't do. Like a cheetah, Niji chased after him clumsily at the beginning, and finally caught up directly behind Rorschach, only 5 steps away. After all, there's a monkey character in Iron Monkey Fist, and monkey represents flexibility, agility, climbing on big trees, jumping on cliffs, moves that seedlings didn't care about in the past. In this chase, everything was used, just like a rusty machine with lubricating oil. The speed of action more than doubled. Originally, there was only the sense of energy growing in the fists, the strength and wind from the swing. But now it flows to the limbs, and every step of the foot brings strong wind and explosive power. It was as if explosives were placed under his feet and suddenly detonated, directly pushing Niji's body forward. Here we are. Rorschach, who had been running in front, stopped on the rooftop of a building and looked at the building below and the two vans in the building's parking lot. Niji stopped, stabilized his body, and adjusted his breathing, even though running all the way was very exhausting. But he didn't feel tired at all, and he didn't even sweat much. He could feel the surging power in his body when he clenched his fists, as endless as a wide river. Who is down here? Niji rubbed his numb and itchy hands. The wounds seemed to be stimulated and began to recover. Mr. Big, he's a damn human trafficker. It seems like the Los Angeles police didn't catch him. Rorschach raised his hand, moved the white gloves on his hand, and the ink mask on his face changed. Several strong thugs walked out of the building, wearing white t-shirts with the word G spray-painted on the front. They were a group of gang members wandering around the city. A bunch of gangsters, trash, guys who take pleasure in crime. Just as they came out of the building carrying the goods of the transaction and walked to the van, Rorschach jumped out. With the impact of jumping from the building, Rorschach hit his knee and knocked a gangster out. This sudden incident shocked the gangsters, but when they saw the person who attacked them, the fear on their faces became even more intense. Rorschach, a legend on the streets of Los Angeles. Kill him, a bald gangster yelled at the top of his voice, which contrasted well with his fat body. The other gangsters also reacted and reached for guns and knives, but Rorschach moved faster and punched the nearest person. Before the man could take out the gun, Rorschach punched him in the neck. The man's neck was completely crooked, as if his cervical vertebrae were misaligned, and he fell to the ground with his head tilted and screaming. The man next to him took out a pistol, but his fingers were grabbed by Rorschach, and he pulled the pistol and his wrist in a circle, twisting the joints directly. At the same time, Rorschach kicked him on the side of the hip, knocking him down. Rorschach turned sideways to avoid the dagger, stabbing him from behind, kicked the egg to pieces with a side kick, and then snatched the dagger from the man's hand. He stabbed his neck with a knife and pulled it out. Blood spurted out from the wound. The artery ruptured and the blood flow continued. The bald gangster also pulled out his pistol. But in just a few seconds, Rorschach had already knocked down 3 people, and those 3 people were directly crippled. Clean violence, as easy as strangling a chicken to death, made these gangsters who were good at using violence immediately feel scared. Just when the bald gangster was aiming at Rorschach, Meow Moo, who came down from the roof, kicked him with a strong kick and directly kicked him away and hit him against the van. Before Niji could make his second move, the spinning dagger flew over and was inserted directly into the bald gangster's forehead. Niji turned around and looked over. Rorschach had already begun to deal with the last gangster. He punched the right rib and hit the liver hard. Rorschach quickly added another punch, and the gangster suddenly had thick blood pouring out of his mouth and fell to the ground. "You're too slow," Rorschach turned around and said. Niji reached out and pulled out the M500 revolver from his waist. Without saying anything, he walked directly into the building. Chapter 76 Treasure Hunt in One Night. Niji learned many things, such as Mr. Big is not actually big. On the contrary, the so-called Mr. Big is a dwarf less than 1 meter tall. Rorschach is indeed the person those gangsters fear the most. With his actions last night, he almost completely wiped out a gang. On the streets, there is another legend about Rorschach, and in the Los Angeles police station, there are criminal files about Rorschach. I'm afraid that's a few more pages. However, this has nothing to do with seedlings. He is currently in a suburban cemetery in Los Angeles, wearing a dark green canvas coat and carrying a shovel on his shoulder, looking for something among a pile of tombstones. Following the feeling in his heart, Meowmoo walked far away from the cemetery and found a broken tombstone in a pine forest. The place was very desolate, and no one would notice it at all. Niji raised his head and looked around, reached out and touched the golden 6-pointed star hanging around his neck and scanned it with his true seeing eye. He didn't want what happened last night to happen again. He didn't even know that someone was standing behind him. It felt too bad. Meowmoo picked up the shovel and dug twice into the soil under the tombstone, confirming what he felt in his heart, that it was indeed here, right under the tombstone. Am I going to disturb the rest of the dead in order to become stronger? Yes, that's the kind of person I am. Miyamu laughed to himself, picked up the shovel, and in a few strokes he dug up the tombstone, pulled it up, and put it aside. There was a clang sound, and the shovel hit something. The seedling squatted down and reached out to dig the soil below. It was a coffin. I don't know when it was buried, but the surface still looks like new, and there are rusty iron chains tied to it. It looked like something untouchable in those supernatural stories, but Niji directly picked up the shovel and cut off the iron chain like a piece of wood. Even if a vampire is inside today, he has to open it and take a look. After digging out the coffin, Niji pulled out his pistol, held the gun in one hand, touched the lid of the coffin with the other, and let out a breath. With a click, the lid of the coffin was lifted, and the barrel of the M500 revolver in his hand was pointed inside. Last night, this pistol shattered the heads of at least 4 people. Nothing happened, just a faint musty smell, like the smell of clothes that have been left for a long time. There are no zombies emerging from coffins, flying bats, or wailing ghosts. It was very calm, so calm that even the seedlings were a little uncomfortable. Niji raised his hand and slapped himself in the face, saying angrily, "Isn't it better to be calm? You're so mean." Niji turned around and looked around again. Although he could see everything around him due to the effect of the eye of true seeing, he still wanted to confirm it with his own eyes. Then we opened the museum and touched the corpse. Although there was no body in the coffin, there were only a few items: a hooded robe of unknown material, a few bottles, and a thick book. Miyaoji reached out and picked up the book. As soon as he took it, Miyaoji said in shock, "FK. Alchemy Codex. It records everything about a great alchemist. Turning stone into gold is not a legend, and even God is not an existence that cannot be created." Niji opened his mouth and didn't know what to say for a while. Is this the legendary heresy? If it were in the dark Middle Ages, with this introduction, he would definitely be tied to the stake and lit on fire to become a roasted birdman. But God? Niji suddenly remembered that the God gold coin dug out last night was probably also created by him, right? Thinking of this, Miyaoji quickly opened the Alchemy Codex and flipped through 6 or 7 pages in a row before discovering. He's so weird, he can't understand the words on it. It's not English, it's not Chinese, it's not even like those common international languages. It's a bit like a small language. But there are pictures on it. So Niji rummaged backwards, and on the last few pages, he saw pictures of God's gold coins. The front is an angel with wings spread, and the back is half angel and half devil. Niji licked his dry lips, isn't it, if he understands what's above? Can you make this kind of gold coin yourself? Damn, turn on the full power and build a coin printing machine. Niji started laughing as he thought about it. Although it was a bit whimsical, it didn't stop him from being happy. The frustration of last night was gone, and Niji's current mood was as comfortable as drinking a bowl of cold water on a hot day. He felt so comfortable that he wanted to hum a song now. Holding the Alchemy Codex in his arms, Miyaoji looked inside the coffin again. This book is so awesome, and other things. Niji quickly reached for it and grabbed the cloak. Phantom cloak, alchemy item, a cloak made of metal, which can offset magic attacks and offset gravity, enabling short-term flight. The cloak can transform into a human figure and move quickly. Nice one. Niji picked up the gray cloak. It looked too ordinary on the outside, but with metal inside, it was so awesome. Metal also has a name called Ninth Metal, which is the highest-ranking extraordinary material in the DC universe. It is a dark metal full of dark energy. This ranking of extraordinary materials is not in reverse order, but in forward order. The 10th ranked metal is X metal. It is a metal that can build the universe. It is full of infinite possibilities. It has been used to build the universe, the Mother Box, and Batman's ultimate armor in the 6th dimension. The characteristics of metal are to subvert all laws of physics and magic, and it can also enhance the user's own ability and restore injuries. Even pure metal can make people immortal. And in the DC universe, many superhero equipment are made of metal. Batman has collected several pieces of metal to fight against supernatural creatures. However, this cloak does not have that many functions. Niji looked at it and found that it was probably a matter of material, compared to those made of a single piece of end metal. The end metal used in this cloak was made into thin wires, and many runes rusted out inside the cloak. There may not be enough material to enchant the cloak again, and there really aren't many of this kind of metal in the main universe. But no matter what, the seedlings were still very happy. This thing is an artifact, at least before the version update. Niji can directly compete with those mages head-on. Do you know how it feels to have a mercury knife at the beginning? Niji doesn't know, but he can already imagine that those mages who were rubbing fireballs were beaten to death by him on the spot. Niji picked up those bottles again. Maybe it's because it's been too long, and this thing seems to have failed. Niji picked up the bottles, looked at the turbid liquid inside, shook them, and took them all away. Even if it fails, you can still keep it and take it home to water the flowers. Like a stingy rich man, Niji held the things in his arms and started to leave. After walking out for a few steps, he ran back and picked up the coffin. This thing must be 70 or 80 years old at least, or hundreds of years old at least, and its appearance has not changed at all. Good stuff. Niji wore a cloak, carried the coffin, and ran out in a hurry, with the corner of his mouth grinning to the back of his head. Not long after he left, a lazy-looking guy in a suit walked over with a cigarette in his mouth and stood in front of the pit, looking at the broken tombstone. The person who came was none other than John Condenstein, who was regarded as a broomstick by Niji. He had no other intention. He just wanted to ask Niji to borrow something. As for when he would return it, Condenston had never repaid anything except favors, and the favors were repaid by him in revenge for his friend's death. As for why he died, it's quite embarrassing to say that. It's 100% because of Condenstein, the bad guy. Isn't this guy a little weird? Condenston tilted his head, threw the cigarette but on the ground, turned the tombstone over, and rubbed his fingers with magic on it. On the broken tombstone, an ancient text appeared intermittently, ignoring lost, final tomb. Is this hidden magic? Condenston became interested. Anyone who can use this kind of magic is definitely not a small character. But looking at the empty pit, Condenston smacked his lips, took out another cigarette, put it in his mouth, and started smoking. The doctor said he had lung cancer and needed to smoke less. He had reduced the number of cigarettes he smoked to 3 packs a day, which was really hard. However, Condenston still had some doubts. The guy just now was called Meowji, a Chinese boy. I didn't see any magic fluctuations on his body. He shouldn't be magic, but the pendant in his hand is definitely a good thing. Maybe even a fake artifact. Just taking a glance at it, Condenston's heart was moved. It was really difficult to find a magic jewelry that still had magical effects these days. He only had a keychain on his body. It is the holy pattern key corresponding to the 12 demon kings of hell. It has the effect of exorcising demons. The other items on his body can only be said to be restrained in terms of materials against demons, sneaky, and other supernatural creatures. There are no enchantments or other special effects. No, you have to find a way to borrow it and study it. Condenston nodded secretly. The only problem was that Niji was too vigilant. He just heard his name and drew his gun. He couldn't continue the conversation at all. His attempt to fool the devil's tongue didn't work anymore. Gotta find a way. Condenston suddenly remembered the beetle and grinned. The backup he had left at that time was still useful. Chapter 77 Holy Flame hammered downstairs of an old-style apartment. Meow Moo lay on the ground, holding a crowbar, and took apart all the floor tiles for a long time. Outside, Jason held a sign indicating that construction was underway to clear the sewer, preventing others from coming. Meow Moo removed the floor tiles, then picked up a shovel and dug into the ground a few times. If it was not the right place to dig from, he would have wanted to get explosives and drill into the building to blast directly. Because Jason inquired, an old lady in her 90s who lived in an apartment building said that in the past, there was a basement here, and a lot of people lived there. The pavement at the back was adjusted, the people in the basement were moved out, and the door was sealed. She lived down there, very close to the sewer, and it was very humid in the summer. Niji wore the phantom cloak under his clothes, close to his body, just like underwear, which was a bit unique. He had previous experience of digging graves, so he was very motivated this time. Suddenly, they dug to the door and quickly dug out a hole, which was also an iron door. After knocking on it a few times with a shovel, A hole was cut out in the rusty iron door. Niji expanded the hole again, and there should be no problem if an adult got in. However, he did not rush in. Instead, he lit a thin cigar and threw it in along the hole. Seeing the red light of the cigarette, but rolling by without extinguishing, Meow Moo felt relieved that he had made no big mistake. The cat bent down and got into the hole. It was very spacious down there. Meow Moo held a flashlight and shined it inside. It was indeed a basement, very spacious, and there was some furniture scattered on the ground. They were already covered with thick mold. Meow Moo sensed them carefully and walked towards the innermost part. The ground was soft when you stepped on it, and you didn't know how many layers of mold had grown there. When you came down, you didn't wear a mask, which was a bit of a miscalculation. Niji tied his sleeves to his face to act as a mask. Walking all the way to the end, you can hear the sound of the sewer flushing. Next to the sewer, there's a broken wooden door with mushrooms growing on it. Niji kicked it open. The rotten wooden door fell apart in an instant, and a lot of spore dust smoke rose up. Meow Moo's flashlight was shining inside. It was a single room, very narrow, with only one bed and a workbench. It was also covered with dust and covered with mold and mushrooms. This side is close to the sewer pipe and is more humid. Meow Moo walked to the workbench and stretched out his hand to wipe the thick mold on the table. Under the light of the flashlight, the metallic luster lit up. It was a silver lighter with a beautiful pattern. Meow Moo reached out and picked it up. It was heavy and very weighty. Holy Flame Hammer, a magic item, a weapon made by devout saints. It contains sacred flames, which can burn out all evil spirits and sweep away the darkness. Weapon. Meow Moo looked at the square-shaped lighter in his hand. It was purely mechanical. There was a flint on it. It could make a fire by rubbing the wheel. It looked like it was burning kerosene. Meow Moo raised his hand and put it on the ignition wheel, rubbed it hard, and with a bang, a white flame burst into flames, and the flame was more than 1 meter high. It directly set Niji's hair on fire. FK, FK. Niji quickly patted his hair, then remembered the clothes on his body, and quickly put the hood over his head. The flames dissipated instantly, leaving only the smell of burnt hair echoing in the room. Niji touched her hair and bared her teeth. He looked at the lighter in his hand and wiped it with his fingers again. This time, Niji moved the fire area away and released the flames at the door. A single spray could shoot up to 3 meters. But this thing seems to be really burning kerosene, because the flames are no longer as fierce as they were at the beginning. After trying it several times, Meow Moo finally understood how to use this thing. The power of the flame could be adjusted. Holding a thin cigar in his mouth, Meow Moo lit the cigar with the Holy Flame Hammer. Not to mention, using the Holy Flame to light a cigarette, the taste was extraordinary. Niji held a thin cigar in his mouth and continued to wipe the dust in front of the workbench. When he saw something, he stuffed it into the bag behind him and took it out before talking. But he did find something. To be precise, it was a drawing. There was only 1 page. On it was a gun. It looked like a Winchester M1873 lever rifle, an artifact from the Civil War. It had a lever-loading mechanism, and the magazine under the front barrel could hold 5 bullets. This gun type started from the war against the Indians and continued to the end of World War II. It was used almost everywhere, and it was also a frequent guest in Western cowboy movies. However, the lever-action rifle on the drawing is very different. It has special patterns and runes on it. It looks like Niji reached out and took out the golden 6-pointed star hanging around his neck. He looked at the runes on it and compared them. There are so many similarities, this pattern. Niji looked at the Holy Flame Hammer lighter again. The patterns on it were almost the same. It looked a bit religious, as if it had something to do with the Holy See and the manufacturer of this thing. Pious saints, this is 100% the property of the Holy See, but now it has the surname Meow. If anyone dares to ask for it, then try this holy fire. It will be over if it burns or not. Anyway, it burns very much. Niji rolled up the drawings, put them into the backpack behind him, stuffed all the utility knives on the table into them, and groped around on the bed again. He also wanted to find out if the gun on the drawing was in this room. It seemed like it was really gone. After looking through it again and even knocking on the wall, Meow Moo walked out reluctantly, crawled out of the basement, and filled the ground back. After Jason saw it, he quickly came over to help. The two of them finished laying the floor tiles and ran away quickly. Condenstein, who stood on the roof and watched condescendingly for a long time, threw the finished cigarette butt at his feet and stamped it out. There were already more than a dozen cigarette butts thrown on the ground, as well as an empty cigarette box. Coming down from the stairs, Condenstein stepped on the ground unbelievingly, with an indescribable awkwardness on his face. He was sure that Niji had gotten something good from it, but he was very sad. This place was very close to the apartment building where he lived, very close. It was just a street away, and he had walked past it. Shit luck. Condensed cursed in discomfort, turned around, and left. 2 minutes later, he ran back with a shovel. What if there was something left in it? That guy was definitely not a magician. He could see clearly that he was just a dilettante who was just lucky. No, it's not even half-assed. You must have discovered something else when you go down there. Why didn't you discover this place first? While digging, Condensed felt heartbroken. Why is there no magic for treasure hunting? Damn it! Turning grief and anger into strength, Condensed dark, rotten lungs dug a hole in the ground without even breathing. It may also be because the seedlings were dug again, so the soil became soft. Condensed is not as careful as Niji. Besides, someone has already gone in and explored, so there is no danger. After getting into the basement, Condensed snapped his fingers and light emitted from his body. This was a thing used by those magicians to fool people in the past, but the lighting was still very good. Condensed didn't even need to look for the messy footprints on the ground. He walked straight into the innermost part, just taking a look at the scorched marks on the door frame. Condensed's expression became serious. When dealing with demons, he often has to prepare some things to restrain demons, such as the best holy water, which is contaminated with sacred aura, so he is very sensitive to this. Condenstein raised his hand to the burnt area and rubbed it with his fingers. Like a powder addict, he put his fingers in front of his nose and took a deep breath. Then I sneezed. The smell was so good. It is more authentic than the source water taken from the river in the Holy Land after the Pope personally blessed it. And it's very strong like a flame. Holy shit. Condenstein hurriedly walked into the house. The house had been turned over by seedlings, and everything was taken away. However, Condensed's eyes still found some traces. His eyes were capable of picking out 5 holes in one word in the contract of hell. To be honest, the demon kings of hell are too simple to compare with this black-hearted Jacon. Condensed raised his hand, and the light on his hand burst out. Some marks appeared on the table. They were the marks left by things that had been left for a long time, although they were very messy. However, Condenstein looked at a few patterns, quickly reached out and touched them, and extracted the traces on them. He usually didn't like to use spells, but this time he made an exception. He looked at the floating traces and slowly reorganized them. He immediately determined that this was a divine weapon. Maybe it was blessed by God, and it was definitely not an ordinary thing. The pattern on it is the sacred pattern used only by the church's tribunal. Condensed has already begun to consider the possibility of killing the seedlings and grabbing this thing. This is an artifact. There are no 2 things in the Holy See. There is only one cross sword, which is still passed down from generation to generation within the Holy See, and no one has ever seen it. There are a few holy objects, but the holy objects all have serious side effects or simply consumables. Condensed also had a sacred object, the Shroud of Turin, which was only half a piece, palm file size, and was used by pulling silk from it. They make a fake shroud to burn and exorcise evil spirits. It is used less and less every time, and there is no way to replenish it. The artifact is different. It has no side effects. Any magic has a certain price. Condensed knows this very well. The moment he became a magician, he already paid the price. However, Niji didn't know that he was being targeted, so he drove out of Los Angeles in a Beetle with a conspicuous dark red coffin tied to the roof of the car. They did not go to Star City, but drove towards a deep mountain to find the last treasure. Chapter 78, Dionysian Gem. Everything else is easy to say. During the past few days of living and sleeping in the mountains, the seedlings have been tortured. This mountain is a bit big. The car collapsed halfway through the drive and couldn't climb up. They had no choice but to camp on the spot. The tin on the roof of the car was broken. Fortunately, there was a coffin that could be used as a bed, so they just threw it on the ground. It was in the second half of the night. There were wolves. But Niji had a gun. So Jason saved a bunch of wolf fang necklaces and polished them one by one with a piece of rag when he had nothing to do. Let's go, follow behind. Run. Miyama was wearing a cloak, carrying a shovel and a crowbar, and was running at the front. He was as light as a swallow, and his energy was high, and he was far ahead. Jason was far behind and was left behind. In terms of speed and agility, the kid had not yet developed his skills. On a protruding rock, Meow Moo raised his hands to block the sun and looked down at a valley full of gravel. It seemed like it was washed out by an earthquake or a flood, but it was already a long time ago. Until now, he had not thought clearly about what kind of treasures would be hidden here, but it was not easy to come here. Jason ran over from behind panting. Niji threw the rope to him and jumped directly from the top. This scene almost frightened Jason in a cardiac arrest. He quickly ran over and saw the seedlings jumping on the raised rocks like flexible mountain monkeys, using their hands and feet. That flexibility, with the rope on his body, was a restriction and burden for him. Jason slowed down, fixed the rope on the rock, tied it to his body, and forced down a little bit. He wouldn't have been like this before, but he gradually learned everything. There is nothing more profound than experiencing it in person. When Jason used the rope to make an emergency landing, Meowmoo had already jumped to the bottom of the valley, stepping on the moving rocks under his feet, and walked towards the place where he felt the feeling. Right in the innermost part of the valley, after walking a few steps inside, Meowmoo saw a crack opening from the ground, starting from a gap between his fingers and spreading to a 1-meter wide crack. The thing was underneath. Niji picked up the crowbar, knocked on the stone on the ground, took out the holy flame hammer lighter, clicked, and the 2-meter-long flame pierced it like a lightsaber. It was pitch black below, but under the white holy fire, something could be seen, which was a dry spring. Niji looked at the height below the crack, turned off the lighter, grabbed the crowbar, and jumped down, only 2 meters deep. Under the illumination of the flashlight, Meowmoo squatted down and looked at the dry spring. The stones next to it were still white like rust. The stuff is down here. Jason stood outside the crack, holding a flashlight and helping to illuminate the area from a high position, just enough for Meowmoo to free his hands and start digging with the crowbar. The gravel was cracked open by the seedlings, and dry dust flew under the light of the flashlight. After digging twice, the seedling stopped and looked down at a green stone that looked like emerald and popped out from the ground. It looked very smooth and exuded a green color under the light. The green that came out had a strange feeling. So Niji reached out and picked it up. Bacchus gem. Restoration crystal. The crystal formed after the legendary Lazarus pool, the spring of immortality, dried up. After use, it can quickly recover from injuries and can be used indefinitely. The Dionysian gem. Isn't this the Dionysian factor? Niji looked at the Dionysus gem in his hand, looking at the emerald green color, and suddenly felt a little uncertain in his heart. However, he still knows about the Lazarus pool. First, it is an extremely special spring water that can bring people back to life. The most famous one is Lei Xiaogu, the demon leader of the Assassin League. Moreover, in the original world, Lazarus's fountain also resurrected many people, such as Green Arrow and Jason. The Court of Owls in Gotham has a Lazarus pool, but the spring water is very ineffective. They use amber gold and spring water to create immortal claws to maintain the rule of the court. However, Niji also knew one thing. That is the high-end product of the Lazarus pool, which is the Dionysian factor, a special green liquid metal. To be more precise, the Dionysian factor exists in all Lazarus fountains. It is just a matter of purity, but the Dionysian factor cannot be detected by any means. Among them, the most representative one is Gotham's crime prince, the Fear Joker, who has obtained the purest Dionysian factor in the world. Niji weighed the Bacchus gem in his hand, hesitated for 2 seconds, stretched out his tongue, and licked it to taste the saltiness. There was no special taste, but the tongue was a little numb. After smacking his lips, Niji raised his hand to look at the healed wound. There seemed to be a slight change, but it is not so outrageous that it can be healed on the spot. After stuffing the Dionysus gem into his shoulder bag, Miyamu dug a few more times on the ground and put 2 stones into the bag, intending to take them back for testing. "Who?" Jason's voice sounded above, and Miyamu quickly looked up as if he had discovered something. The flashlight fell down and landed on the rocks below. Jason made no sound. Someone was outside. Niji took out his pistol, looked above his head, and held his breath. Only the heartbeat sounded in his ears, and there was no movement outside. "Damn, who?" Niji gritted his teeth and thought to himself, reached out and took out the Dionysus gem from his bag, stuffed it into his mouth, and rolled it with his tongue. Niji was a little worried about Jason's situation. This kid wouldn't shut up for no reason. Reaching out and touching the golden 6-pointed star on his neck, the Eye of True Seeing was activated, and Niji's field of vision suddenly expanded. He could see the situation outside clearly. They were a group of people wearing light brown overalls. They looked like an archaeological team, but the calluses on their hands and the weapons they carried made them definitely not ordinary people. Jason was grabbed by the arms by 2 strong men and pressed against the wall, with a curved-edged dagger placed on his neck. These strong men didn't make a sound. They were as quiet as if they didn't exist. Niji confirmed that there were 11 people here, and there should be others outside. "Did you provoke these people?" Niji thought to himself. Although he had caused some trouble, it was not his turn to be surrounded and killed, right? Gripping the M500 revolver in his hand, Niji looked at the 2-meter-high crack, jumped out from here, and then shot. It would be nice if those people didn't have assault rifles in their hands. There are 4 M16 assault rifles with additional accessories. They all aim this way. If Niji jumped up, he would be greeted by a series of bullets. The enemy cannot move, and I cannot move. This stalemate is really fatal. However, there seemed to be movement outside. Niji stretched out his hand and tugged on his cloak, concentrating on using the effect of the Eye of True Sight to look at the situation outside. A man walked in from the outside. He was an old man, but his hair was black and there were not many wrinkles on his face. He looked like a man in his 40s at most. However, he gives the impression of an old man who has gone through vicissitudes of life, a bit like a Middle Easterner, wearing black clothes and holding a walking stick engraved with golden patterns in his hand. As he was walking forward step by step, the strong men looked at him with great respect, so much so that they put down their guns and bowed their heads in salute. "Chance!" Niji stretched out his arms, and the phantom cloak he was wearing suddenly flew up. The runes inside the cloak lit up, and a black shadow quickly filled the cloak and flew toward the outside of the cloak. The phantom cloak flew out, and the strong men outside reacted immediately, but did not fire. Instead, 2 men with metal short sticks rushed over, one on the left and one on the right. The 2 metal short sticks crossed and swept past, like a crab's large pincers, trying to clamp the phantom cloak. With a bang, the phantom cloak was clamped, and the black shadow inside dispersed like smoke, leaving only the cloak hanging limply on the stick. This sudden change made the 2 people holding the sticks immediately feel that something was wrong, but it was too late. Niji jumped up directly from under the crack, punched one person with his left hand, and knocked another person in the mouth with a revolver in his right hand. With a snap, his lips were split open and blood flowed. Niji reached out and pulled him over, using him as a human shield in front of him, with the M500 revolver in his hand placed on his shoulder. The gun was pointed at the old man in black clothes, his finger was on the trigger, and he could pull it at any time. Chapter 79, The Head of Demons. Lei Xiaogu in the blink of an eye. Miyamu took the advantage. He strangled the strong man in front of him with his arms, and stared at the old man in black clothes in front of him, with the muzzle of his gun firmly locked on him. Good skills. Wearing black clothes, Niji thought he was the old man Lei Xiaogu, or it should be his full name, Lars Algol. Lei Xiaogu's praise was true. The murderous aura in the young man in front of him, his decisiveness just now, and his stability now are all quite rare, but that's all. He had seen too many geniuses in his long life of more than 700 years, and Niji was only good at skills in his eyes. Niji stared at him, feeling an invisible pressure because he couldn't feel the person in front of him, as if he didn't exist at all if his eyes were not staring at him. He seemed to be invisible. Unlike the strong men around him who were hiding their aura, he had dissipated all the aura from his body. "Can you tell me why you came?" Lei Xiaogu asked. The strong men around him also showed a fierce aura, and even the strong man whom Niji was holding with his arms was a little ready to move. Niji increased the strength on his arms again and glanced around, looking at Jason, who was controlled on the wall. The two looked at each other and realized that Jason was really smart and knew immediately what Niji wanted to do. The exchange of glances between the two of them was also under Lei Xiaogu's gaze, but he did not come here for Miaomu and the others, but for the legendary Lazarus Pool. 700 years ago, he obtained the regenerative healing factor because of the Lazarus Pool and founded the League of Assassins. As time went by, the spring water in the Lazarus Pool gradually became less and less, but there was not only one Lazarus Pool in the world, and he came here to find the immortal spring water. They have been searching for hundreds of years in the world. From some legendary corners, they determined that there once was a legend of immortal springs in this area. But this place is so big that they have been searching here for half a year. The Lazarus Pool, like the Dionysian factor, cannot be detected by any means. They can only search. A few days ago, he knew that Niji and the others were coming. At first, it was because of tourists passing by the camp. They drove the wolves to attack Niji and the others. It was normal for them to be eaten by wolves at night. But something abnormal happened. The firepower and equipment brought by the seedlings were far beyond their imagination, and they were merciless, killing almost all the wolves that drove them away. Then, in the past few days, Lei Xiaogu watched the tents of Miaomu and the others moving up the mountain. They also watched their daily boxing and spear training in Lei Xiaogu's eyes. Until today, they got here. Lei Xiaogu also felt the induction of the Lazarus Pool here, so he came to confirm it in person. "Hush!" Niji whistled and pulled the trigger directly, killing no matter who was in front of him. The bullet shot out from the barrel of the gun and flew straight towards Lei Xiaogu, who didn't even move his eyelids. A strong man next to him jumped over and opened his arms to block Lei Xiaogu. With fanatical belief in his eyes, he blocked the .500 Magnum bullet with his chest. The powerful destructive power of the warhead directly shattered the chest of this strong man. Even the protective clothing inside was not blocked, and bright red blood splashed around. At the moment the gunfire rang out, the strong men around them responded. They were members of the Assassins' League, although they were not the most elite group, let alone the best among them. However, the strength cannot be underestimated. Click, click, click. The M16 assault rifle fired first. Niji pushed the human shield in front of him forward and kicked it up. The dense bullets directly hit the human shield into a bloody sieve, and the human shield that was kicked by Niji flew out again, just hitting two strong men with guns. Niji didn't have time to pull the trigger. He raised his right arm directly in front of his face, and a sharp katana swept past. With a clang, it hit Niji's right arm. The strong shark tooth gauntlet blocked the blow like a shield. Niji immediately clenched his fists, and the three blades on the gauntlet popped out. With the sparks of friction, katana was stuck in a gap. Niji raised his leg and kicked out, hitting the heart of the man holding the knife. His strength exploded, and the man spit out a mouthful of blood. Another machete swung at Niji. Niji dodged sideways, raised his hand, and shot a person in the distance, hitting him right between the eyebrows, and his head exploded, just like an exploded red watermelon. Take action whenever you have the chance, no matter how far or near. This is what Niji and Rorschach learned that night. It is said that listening to you is better than 10 years of reading. Niji feels the same now. He can see clearly what he didn't pay attention to in the past. After somersaulting to avoid the combo of two people, Niji raised his hand and punched him, holding the dropped pistol with his left hand. Doing two things at once, he hit a person with the fist of his right hand and pulled the trigger with his left hand. Bang! In less than 20 seconds, 4 people were knocked down in succession. If you include the human shield, who died tragically under his own gun, there were 5. There were not many people here, But Niji's fierce posture forced those people to prepare for a siege. There were originally 3 people holding Jason, but now there's only one, and his eyes are still fixed on Niji. Jason glanced quietly to the side, raised his hand and elbow, and struck the ribs of the person behind him with a very standard posture. This time, even through the protective clothing underneath the clothes, the man was still frightened. The pain was not very serious, but the rabbit in his hand dared to bite people. Jason didn't have time to discuss it with him. He took a step forward and at the same time raised his back heel and kicked his VA. This move feels a bit like a scorpion's tail swing and a barb kick. The man behind Jason's instinctive reaction was to reach out and grab Jason, but he kicked him in the crotch. No matter how long he had been trained and had a strong will, this kick still had an effect. "Ah!" the man screamed. With red eyes, he reached out and grabbed Jason. He had already decided to tear Jason alive into 2 pieces. Jason threw himself down, leaving him with a chance to catch the man. He rolled over again, raised his leg, and kicked the man's crotch again. These 2 hits in a row hit all the weak spots. The man became dull again and stiffened for a moment. The severe pain made him a little stunned, and he was in a trance. Jason seized the opportunity. No, he grabbed the stone on the ground. With enough strength, he rounded his arm and hit the man on the forehead. There was a muffled sound. The skin was torn open and blood was flowing. Then he hit it again, 3 times in a row, and Jason really imitated the cruelty of Niji. After the man fell, Jason remembered to take out his gun. He reached into his pants and took out the Glock 17 modified that Niji had given him. When he was about to pull the trigger, Jason suddenly turned his head and looked to the side. Lei Xiaogu, who was standing not far away, was watching him with a little expectation in his eyes, as if he wanted to watch Jason pull the trigger with his own eyes. Jason swallowed. He felt as if he was being targeted by an ancient Western dragon. The cruel look on his face made him almost drop his pistol. "Run!" The seedlings that emerged from inside hissed at him and raised their hands to block an incoming iron rod. He fell into the siege of those people who cooperated tacitly. Jason quickly turned around and ran out. Lei Xiaogu didn't pay attention to the little guy Jason because there was nowhere to escape here. He turned to look at the seedlings surrounded by those people, rushing left and right. Just now, Niji was stabbed several times and shot in the leg, but the Dionysus gem in his mouth allowed his injuries to be steadily controlled and even tended to heal. This unique phenomenon naturally cannot escape Lei Xiaogu's gaze. He has already confirmed that the Lazarus Pool is here. Chapter 80 heading to Star City, seeing Jason running out, Niji didn't intend to hold back anymore, jumped back and distanced himself. Those people originally wanted to subdue Niji. When they saw Niji retreating inside, they quickly stabilized their position and wanted to outflank him. Miaomu took out the holy flame hammer from his arms, weighed it in his hand, and looked at the strong men in front of him. His fingers turned the grinding wheel, and with a click, white flames burst out. Niji raised his arm and whipped it like a whip. This sudden flame caused the originally solid defense line to collapse in an instant. The white holy flame burned on the body, causing wounds one after another in an instant. The flames burrowed into the skin like bone-eating insects, causing those in pain to scream. At the same time, Niji grabbed the cloak on the ground and put it on himself, and the runes inside the cloak lit up. Miaomu's body became a little lighter, and the flames of the holy flame hammer in his hand burned more fiercely again. The people in front were burned and rolling and writhing on the ground, and they couldn't care about him at all. Niji grabbed his cloak and rushed over. Lei Xiaogu, who was standing in front, looked at the flames that were obviously magic, raised the golden-crusted crutch in his hand, and struck it heavily on the ground. The tail of the crutch hit the ground, and a translucent aura spread out with him as the center. The holy fires burning on those people were also shattered by this circular aura. With more than 700 years of experience, Lei Xiaogu spent hundreds of years traveling around the world, studying both Eastern alchemy and Western mysticism. His long lifespan has made him proficient in almost everything. Whether it is hand-to-hand combat, swordsmanship, fighting, weapons, or firearms, he is omnipotent. And his proud work is the disciple who has made rapid progress. Bruce Wayne, a guy with the flame of revenge in his heart, a guy who can inherit his mantle. At this moment, Miao Mu passed by Lei Xiaogu. Lei Xiaogu was able to stop him, but when he saw Miao Mu's gaze, Lei Xiaogu smiled and swung the crutch to the side. There were always some guys who didn't know the heights of the world and wanted to challenge him. Miao Mu raised his arm and struck at Lei Xiaogu, but the gold-encrusted crutch hit his arm hard, even with the protection of the shark tooth arm armor. Niji heard the sound of broken arm bones. The crutch was made of solid metal, dozens of times heavier than it looked, and it carried the same strength as an iron monkey fist passing through the armor's defense. Niji rushed over in pain. When he rushed outside, he paused and suddenly turned around. A round high-explosive grenade flew out of his sleeves without throwing it inside. Instead, it was thrown on the hillside on the side. When the seedlings rushed out, the grenade pulled out the ring. There was a loud bang, and the rocks on the hillside were shaken by the explosion and rolled down towards the valley, shaking with a huffing sound. Just like an avalanche on a high mountain, all the gravel and rocks on the hillside came down, sealing the entrance of the valley tightly. A smile appeared on Niji's face, and he covered his arm and swallowed. The Dionysus gem in his mouth was working, and the pain in his arm was relieved a lot. At the top of the valley, Jason, who was holding the rope, saw Miao Mu coming out and quickly threw the rope over. A noose was tied to it. Miao Mu was wearing a cloak and reached out to grab the rope. Just like climbing over a wall and walking on flat ground, Miao Mu ran up all the way. Jason was very happy to see that he was safe and sound. Before anyone could ask a word, Niji grabbed him by the collar and ran down the mountain. He got the things, but he also provoked some guys who didn't know the details. Niji gritted his teeth, resisted the idea of going back to throw a grenade, and ran down the mountain. The first priority was to get out of here. It took me several days to walk up the road. Now I am rushed by seedlings in a few hours. If I encounter a cliff, I will jump directly and take various shortcuts. If I can't fall to my death, it will be no problem. Rushing to the parking place, Miao Mu picked up the coffin on the ground, dug up the ground with a shovel, and loaded up the hidden things. Jason had already started the engine. Get in the car. Let's go, let's go. Niji tied the coffin to the roof of the car, jumped into the car, kicked the accelerator, and rushed out. She ran 600 to 700 meters before closing the door. After the seedlings left, Kondenstein, who should have arrived late, did not appear. He was squatting on the hillside, smoking a cigarette, and looking at the valley below buried in gravel. Lei Xiaogu. This name is like thunder to his ears, and he is the head of the devil who has lived for more than 700 years. Kondenstein took a drag on the cigarette and turned to look behind him. A fighter in a fantasy world wearing a tiger mask was fighting fiercely with each move in the air. Kondenstein couldn't help but bared his teeth. He didn't want to provoke the Assassin's League, let alone such a difficult problem. But Kondenstein took out a photo from his pocket, which was a photo of Niji's police badge. Gotham, this place, you can go and see it. Kondenstein tore open the photo and blew out a puff of smoke, causing the photo to burn instantly. I hope Satana, that little girl, won't be as guarded against me as her father. I'm not a bad person, ugh. Kondenstein frowned, jumped off the hillside, and walked in the other direction with lazy steps. More than 10 minutes later, a passage was blasted out of the gravel below the valley. Lei Xiaogu, whose clothes were stained, walked out of it with a gloomy face and looked at almost 1/3 of the valley that had been filled in. It's really well done. The Lazarus pool dried up, and the operation here was considered a failure. Lei Xiaogu closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He had been mentally prepared for this kind of thing, but the feeling of falling short was still uncomfortable. Sir, the person who crawled out from the passage below knelt on one knee, with burn marks on his face and body. Tell Talia that her plan can start. Also, Lei Xiaogu looked up at the hillside. He had already heard the sound of fighting. Ask Bronze Tiger to come with him and inspect Strange to see how far his technology has developed. Yes, Star City is not as prosperous as Metropolis, nor does it have the ancient heritage of Gotham, but the crime rate here is second only to Gotham, but there are not so many perverted lunatics. After all, as we all know, Gotham is a city of criminals. During Darkseid's war, the Apocalypse Demon Army invaded. When other cities turned to their own city heroes for help, only Gothamites picked up weapons and fought against the Apocalypse Demon Army. The key is, Gotham actually ended up in a tie. That was the Apocalypse Demon Army, not the useless National Guard. Of course, the villains of Gotham are the ones who are doing the most hard work. I haven't destroyed Gotham yet. So what if the Apocalypse Demon is dead? Closer to home, the most awkward thing about Star City is the darkness. Not the darkness of society, but the darkness at night. The streetlights on the street are on, but they still can't cover up the skyscrapers here. I don't like the lighting style. They are completely inferior to the bright night city lines of other cities. Only Xingqing really does this to save electricity. The most common gangs here are local, foreign, and there are also bases for overseas mercenaries. Moreover, this is also one of the headquarters of the Assassin's League. Under the cover of darkness, this is the world of careerists, a black river where evil flows and the home of terrorists. It is also the headquarters of the famous Quinn Group. Although it is famous, the group's ranking is already very low. The leader of the Queen Group, Robert Queen, passed away in a shipwreck, and his son Oliver Queen has also been missing for 5 years. Chapter 81 Holiday News. Why should I go back? I'm still on vacation, and my injury hasn't healed yet, right? I'm in Star City. If I don't go, do you think I'm Jerry's fool? The crime team has been busy for 3 days and can't go back. Home at once. Beaches, waves, and scorching sun. Although it is winter now, it is always summer here at the beach in Star City, which is even better than the seaside city. It is no wonder that the tourism industry here is developed. Niji was lying on a beach chair, holding a mobile phone and a bottle of cold beer. He wore sunglasses on his face and looked at the beauties in bikinis playing on the beach. It was such a quiet time, it made people shed tears. The saliva from the corner of his mouth slipped, and Niji picked up the beer and took a sip. I'm not going back. We'll wait until the holidays are over. Besides, I'm a detective affiliated with the Arkham Police Department. I'll be promoted.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.